You're listening to Wolf Spirit Radio.
Welcome, my brothers and sisters, to Race with Time. We're having a little bit of a Skype problem trying to get all of our contacts in here, but I'm going to turn you over to James C. Horak.
Hello, this is James Horak, and I have the illustrious pleasure and privilege to introduce some of the leading voices in the anti-nuke movement. You'll recognize them once that we have them all assembled. They have things of import to say. We do not have Crystal Clark with us tonight, our esteemed colleague Crystal Clark. She is attending to some important matters. Instead, in her place, we have Mhairead McDonald from Scotland, and Mhairead has single-handedly brought to us some of the leading voices in this movement. Whenever I first discussed her coming on the show and being a co-host with me, I had no idea she would succeed so well. But I will step aside and yield the floor to her, and she can introduce our guest tonight.
Thank you, James, and thank you so much to Dave of WolfSpiritRadio for allowing me to step in as well and not be Crystal for the night. I'm not sure if we have everyone. I know we have Andrew, Ebisu. I'm not sure about Christina yet. Is she there? Have we added Christina? I know she was having trouble, and I was hoping also to have Kevin Blanch calling in.
Yeah, I'm here.
You there?
Hello,
I'm here.
Mr. Blanch. How are you this evening?
Hi. Great.
This is fantastic.
Live and kicking.
So we don't have Christina yet, so maybe she'll figure out how to get in there. But, okay, so to get started, I just want to make sure that Kevin's doing all right, because I know he was having tests done. So how are you feeling?
Well, I'm tired and I'm burned out, but I feel pretty good. I told my doctors yesterday I really feel probably the best I felt in 20 years, which is kind of scary. But I got good results yesterday. My big bone marrow biopsy 2-year test was yesterday, and that was a big deal. It was a big deal in there, and they came out strong. So I've still got a ways to go, but I've defied this type of disease that I have is almost 100% killer, and I'm walking an experimental way for the last 2 years. It's been a beast, but so it's good news. I feel really great, to be honest with you. I feel really good physically.
That's fantastic news.
Wonderful, wonderful news.
Yeah.
So,
what a freaking battle.
And you haven't actually spoken to Andrew, have you? You know about Andrew and his films.
I know Andrew, via YouTube and back and forth, but I've never personally spoke to him ever.
Yeah, hello Kevin, how are you?
Great. How are you doing? So nice to talk to you. So nice to meet you.
Yes.
I love your work. Your work's been so powerful. When I first saw your very first video when you did Fukushima on the beach, I was like, wow. I was so turned on that day by that.
Yeah.
I still think of all the stuff that's been done out there in Fukushima, I still believe that Fukushima Beach one, that should be in theaters everywhere.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Powerful piece.
Yeah,
Hollywood quality too.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. Well, there's some production, obviously some production errors, but I'm really happy it moved people such as yourself, because I was, pretty much channeling all that you and Miss Milky the Clown have been teaching me. That's the product of what I'd been listening and watching. So, it was a great great conduit for all the information you've been giving. So that's where it comes from, really. So, it's great.
Yeah, what timing this all happened. I was going along with this whole YouTube gig, experimenting with it, on my PhD, and then boom, I'm an anti-nuclear, have been my whole life, and Fukushima happened, changed my world, and so I was there right there, and for me to rant and rave and carry on, I've really, really tried to take a different angle on the nuclear fight. I've been involved in the anti-nuclear movement my whole life, and I've really tried to take a different angle to try to put some strength into this, to contemporize it, because it's just been a disaster since 1982. And so, and then for me to get, to rant and rave and carry on about leukemia, and then to me get leukemia, 7 months later, I mean, it's so staggering to even think about this whole journey. I would have never believed I would ever get it. Even, I rant and rave and carry on, you're going to get leukemia, I live here, I know the whole thesis. I would have never, ever believed that I would ever get it in my entire life. And boom, when I got it, I got the worst kind you can get, just like a freight train hit me. So the timing of this has been, I mean, it's unbelievable, really. But YouTube has changed the world as far as activism, as far as knowledge, the information age, and a lot of people, you and I have taken advantage of it. People have taken advantage of it, but it's really still underutilized so dramatically. It's a powerhouse genre as far as knowledge goes, and this word is spreading. It is getting out. If they'd had YouTube when Chernobyl happened, the whole nuclear monsters, they'd have been done a long time ago. And I know everybody gets frustrated, and this is a catastrophe, but, it is working. I just came from the Imagine Dragon concert. I was just over there. I protested over there, and those kids are going to drop a banner supposedly down in there today. I just left. Say Fukushima when they play radio with them. They're Utah kids. They're here right here at the campus. I'm right on the campus right now. I protested over there all afternoon. But people here are oblivious to, I mean, they're so oblivious to the fact that we're the cancer capital of the world. When I grew up here in Utah, we were the downwind. I mean, this was the number one story in Utah when I grew up. The 300 open air tests in Nevada and everybody dying in Utah. I mean, that's all anybody ever talked about. And it was very real, people dying, and it's like now everybody's just so, it's like they just accept cancer here. Cancer's just, in Utah, is just, everybody has horrific death stories of cancer, and they just accept them. It's just, I don't know. I don't even know the word to use for it. We're the cancer capital of the world. Chernobyl may be higher than us now, but not far. And we're the autism capital of the world. And that was, a lot of my PhD was working on proving that nuclear follows autism. Before.
I remember when I was prospecting in Utah, I spent a lot of time in Grand Junction, and they had a uranium mill there, which you're probably aware of.
Oh, yeah.
And, one of the things that was interesting is when they would mill the ore and concentrate it, they would put it in a cake and lay it out in the sun, and the workers would go out to turn it. And they would absolutely lose track of time because of the radon gas. And that's when they started experimenting with how to create lost time.
Yeah. I mean, all of these experimentation came out of Utah and the Southern Utah thesis. The whole cabal of nuclear nightmare just grew, and they tried. My dad was an atomic veteran. Grew up here, was a drafted Marine. By the way, my uncle raised me. The special or the D-Day Omaha Beach vet passed away yesterday. But anyway, my dad, when I was a kid, he got out of the Marines. He was in the Marines for a long time. He was human guinea pig in the test site, and he was an incredible specimen of a man. And he'd have these incredible seizures when I was a kid, and I didn't even know what this was. And he'd go into this amnesia, and he was in the vet's hospital, and they're always experimenting on him back and forth from San Diego to here. We lived here, but, he had ties to the Pendleton. So was stationed at, my uncle was the second shirt at Colorado Springs in the Air Force. His 1 year younger brother, and he was stationed at the Pentagon. My dad was so Semper Fi, he wouldn't talk about it. But when I was a little boy, I mean, I would spend my time when I wanted to see him, I'd have to go to the vet site. I'd be in there for months at a time with these incredible lapses of memory, and there were all kinds of people in that hospital there, from the uranium experiments, all the experimentation that was going on all over southern Utah. By the way, my dad and those guys, now that I found out, after he passed away, after they human guinea pigged those 40,000, they fed them LSD. You know, and they used every kind of experiment you could ever believe on those guys. And then they just erased them from humanity. Says, oh, they didn't exist. You know, their records all burned in the fire. But the uranium thesis here was gigantic, you know, all over southern Utah, the experimentation that was going on down there. You know, still is. There's a fire burning in the one you speak of that's been burning for 70 years now, and it's still burning. But people here don't even talk about it anymore. They're just like, it's just like a subject they don't even, when I was a boy, it was all anybody talked about. It's just a dummied down society that I think people have, deep down inside, I think people have given up. You know, they know, and they just, I don't know what it is with them. You know, I term it ignorance, which I know it is ignorance, but I don't know that they don't care. I just think they feel like, what can I do? You know, nothing, so they don't even think about it.
No.
You know, except death.
Yeah, I think it's got a lot to do with like perception management, like managing people's, you know, perceiving of things. Like, why do people get cancer? It's this unknown thing. Like there's so much attention to finding the cure to cancer, but you know, we know what it is, but people.
Well, my doctors asked me yesterday. They're like, you know, I'm in probably the number one leukemia unit in the world by default. Fimbo Peterson at the top of LDS Bone Marrow Transplant Center. By the way, I'm the very first guy in the United States, only the second one, to have OS de novo AML, which always gets diagnosed, leukemia-conforming tumors. I diagnosed myself, but to do this without a bone marrow transplant. They always automatically bone marrow transplant, and we decided, so I'm walking along, but yesterday they're like, Kevin, what is it you're going to do with your life if we can, you know, if we turn you loose to go to work? You know, because I've been released to go to work, and they're like, I says, I'm going to take on freaking fighting the people that gave me cancer. I says, we want to treat the byproduct. I mean, he says, that's all we want to treat here. We want to treat, you know, the Huntsman Center's right here, Huntsman Chemical, 385 plants making benzene all over the world, but yet they're the biggest, you know, cancer hospital one of them in the country here. So all we want to do is talk about trying to cure cancer, I mean, it's such a gigantic thesis here and all over the country, but no one dares even mention the root cause of cancer. It's a taboo subject here. You know, it's outrageous that nobody will talk about. Cancer is, leukemia, you know, all cancers are correlated with nuclear fallout. Now, yeah, sure, cancer was around, but the studies all exist. Cancer, in a dramatic way, is absolutely 100% mirrors with nuclear. You can take a chart and lay it over the top of the rate of cancer in this country and where the nuclear fallout is, and they are 100% directly correlated. So is multiple sclerosis, so is autism, so is a whole range of diseases. And nobody will even talk about it. It's like taboo.
You might find a cure if you talk about it.
Yeah. Well, they have done a lot of cure. I mean, the type I have, you know, if it was even 5 years ago, I'd have been dead. I mean, they do miracles in that hospital, and it's a brutal. That's what I think a lot of people don't realize about the treatment of AML, which nuclear fallout, you know, thyroid cancer. Yeah, what do? They cut your thyroid out. You know, we call it Utah smiley face here. It's everywhere, but AML, even if you do survive, I'm here to tell you that treatment is so incredibly brutal. I mean, it is brutal. They quarantine you in there. They put a stent in your spine. They put one in your jugular vein, one in your brain stem, and you're quarantined in there in an ICU unit from hell. And they basically kill every cell in your body over and over and over. And then, you know, they plug you in. You got that central line hanging out of your jugular. It's called the Hickman line. And they spin your blood. They have tubes in the rooms that go down to the pharmacist, and they take your blood every morning at 3 a.m. and they come in there and they just plug you in. You're like a machine in there. You're plugged in with, you name it. I had 22 things hanging on my tree at one time, and they do it over and over and over. You know, it's a radical treatment, but people think that they confuse chronic leukemia with acute leukemia. Now, chronic leukemia is nuclear fallout too, but most people that get acute leukemia, by the time they realize what they've got, they're dead. I mean, I got sick. I was perfectly healthy. I went from 170 pounds to 130 pounds in less than 3 weeks. I mean, it mows you down so fast. So people think, they confuse it with chronic leukemia or, different kinds of cancers. They don't realize that for the most part, nuclear fallout cancers is a death sentence. Mm-hmm. I mean, and to think that they could ever even come up with a cure, because you think about it, leukemia, AML is blood cancer, and those cells go rogue, and your entire body has cancer in it. Every cell of your body. And so think about trying to cure somebody, trying to save somebody like that when your entire body is cancer from head to toe. And that's what they do. So, and it's not a pleasant death either, and it's not people think, because most people die. I've sat with so many of them in there. I'm head of our support group, and so many of my friends have passed, and you don't just lay down and die, It's an ugly, ugly, horrible death, and it attacks a lot of very healthy people. By the way, a lot of people in that hospital from Moab in central Utah, because the guy who won the Ironman a few years ago died in there. The number one triathlete in the world, female, is in there right now. A lot of them end up in Moab training, and like I said, all the uranium tailings are down there.
Yeah.
All the nuclear fallout, and they're in there training hard, and they're breathing it deep. And if people knew the truth about that area down there, no one would visit there. No one would ever go. And it's one of those spectacular, beautiful places on the face of the earth. So people go down and they ride their bikes and they train and, and they breathe in those uranium tailings and the 300 open air test of plutonium.
Yeah. There in Grand Junction on the tailings pile, I would spend a lot of time in Grand Junction. On the uranium tailings pile, there was a Manor bakery that had been built. In the intakes for the ovens, they had convection ovens, was right over the hottest part of those tailings. We took a dosimeter down there and measured it.
Wow.
So, you were getting a little surprise in your loaf of bread, weren't you?
Oh, boy. I mean, the whole uranium thesis, that this crazy idealism that somehow nuclear is the clean replacement to coal, just say it didn't even have an accident. No Fukushima, no Chernobyl, none of this. Just think about the footprint. I mean, the mining of those uraniums, they're hideous. You go to Calgary, you go to southern Utah, the moxing of the fuel, the carbon footprint alone is much worse than coal ever dreamed to be.
Yeah.
People say, oh, God, coal's killed more people than freaking nuclear. I'm like, are you kidding me? No, nuclear's killed hundreds of thousands of times more than coal has ever killed. Like I said, you've been down there. You know what those uranium mines are. They're hideous.
Oh, yeah. Well, I knew a number of uranium miners, and all of them, whenever they'd find a deposit, it'd usually be dirt, and they would have to tunnel back into it and crawl in there on their hands and knees to make sure the continuity was consistent throughout, when then they'd turn around and sell it to the government. And they would crawl on their arms, in their stomach, they had tumors the size of grapefruits up under their arms and along their waist. And you'd say, well, aren't you concerned about that? Oh, no, I've learned how to live with it.
Yeah, they all died young. None of those guys ever. They all died. I know tons of them. Like I said, that uranium mining in Utah was a gigantic gig in the 60s and 70s and, in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. All over, not just in southern Utah, even up this way, too. And like I said, when I grew up as a boy here, it was a number. Our governor, when I was young in 1981, Scott Matheson, died of exactly what I have at 54 years old. And he was very beloved. But by the way, he was a progressive, believe it or not, here in Utah. People think Utah, all this radical freaking neocon nutcase state, Mike Lee specials, but it wasn't always that way. And they were very environmentalist. The Mormons here were very, very environmentally conscious. So much more. Well, the campus I'm standing on right now, where I do all my work, I knew Edward Abbey personally. I knew Fawn McKay Brody personally. I knew a lot of these great, environmentalists. Carol Gallagher, who I still know very well. they all came to Utah for very good reasons. I mean, we were, even that asshole Redford, they landed here because we were, this state really was ground zero for environmentalists. The Mormons cared about the environment. They don't anymore. We're the filthy, dirtiest place there ever is. This whole mindset that shifted all over the world, as far as rape the earth for any profit, supposedly jobs, which is so untrue. And people don't even think of the byproduct or the consequences of any actions anymore. They're like, it's all about right now, a little bit of money right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's incredible that they're proposing that new nuclear power plant in Britain. It's just craziness. Like, we've only had a triple meltdown like a year or so ago, and they're proposing that. Yeah.
How is that possible? The mindset. I mean, I'll tell you the one thing that has disillusioned me the most of my activism on this. The one thing that I am blown away the most, and I knew what this machine was going to be right at the gig, because I knew they were going to go right out of the Chernobyl playbook, and I knew they were going to play right out. And that was before I knew it was a triple meltdown. I thought it was a single meltdown the first day, at least one. I reported as one that first day. I went crazy.
Well,
I knew
that's
that.
what they said it was.
Well, they didn't even say that.
Yeah.
They didn't say single. They didn't say a single melt. You know how long it took them? Do you know how long it took anybody besides myself to report that this was a full core meltdown? 6 months.
6 months.
6 months for even one. They denied it the whole time. I was the only one calling it a full core meltdown for a long time, and then some of us other vloggers out there, that's YouTubers, we did all the heavy lifting. We did all the work on this. This has been reported in incredible, accurate, and detail by a small handful group. Andrew, myself, and so the story's out there.
Christina?
Christina's here.
Hi, guys.
Miss Consolo, how are you?
Christina's here.
Oh, it's been an intense day.
Notice her also known as Radchick. That's very good.
Yeah. That's Radchick from Facebook, particularly. That's where I found her initially. And just to cover what Kevin was saying about just a few group of people, I mean, coming from my perspective, when I really wanted to get into looking into Fukushima and get the deeper story, I mean, that's where I went to, was YouTube. And I found Miss Milky, the clown, and then I found Kevin. I found you, Kevin, quite early on in the piece. And I think it was the one that you were repeating again and saying, look what I was saying way back then, and nobody was listening. I think that was one of the ones I found. And to be honest, I knew you were telling the truth, and it really overwhelmed me. I kind of walked away from it, because at the time I had so much going on. But I remembered you, because I remembered the way you were, and I thought, that guy knows what he's talking about. That's the truth. So coming back to you and Miss Milky,
that's
and
what
then
happened
finding,
when it got told in a radical way in the early days by me and by other people pulled back. And then when it started to dribble and drab and this, boiled frog into the so-called alternative media, then people are like, whoa, this thing is real, The world populace is so ignorant to this day that they're still waiting for confirmation from the big mainstream media. To this day, they're waiting for it. And the one thing that has disillusioned me more than anything on this whole fight that I'm blown off, I would never believe I thought for sure after day 100, day 200, day 300, day 500, somebody would break ranks at Berkeley or Stanford or Oregon State or Washington. We'd get a study come out of the Pacific Ocean showing plutonium in the plankton, and the whole world would go in crazy, and that would be the end of nuclear. I really thought that's how it was going to play out. And here we are, 956 days, 957 days later? Not one single study freaking out of any of these 300 marine biologists, parachutes, not one saying yay or nay. Now, who would ever believe that is possible? But so here we go. We have to just use pure logic. And how can anyone believe that this thing isn't the greatest ecological disaster in the history of humanity that has even half a brain cell? Yet people are still waiting for confirmation from BBC, Reuters, CNN, they're still waiting. And, they can wait right to I equate it to the arguments we're having in 1915, 1916, 1917 about germs. And people are the same thing. Exact same thing. They said, oh, these germs don't kill people. You're crazy. You're all crazy. The science world covered it up. They covered it up for 5 years. And then we had the influential plague of 1918. And
there were medical doctors at that time that didn't even believe in germ theory.
No, most of them didn't.
Yep.
Until the influential plague of 1918, which ravished this country, it killed some. I used to make my students walk through our cemetery. I said, walk through the cemetery, and I want you to record every single person, whole families, 1918. And after that, and by the way, the media who covered that up, and the science world that covered up, the intellectual mobs turned on those people. Do you know what? I mean, that's the part of the story that people don't know about that. That after that did happen, and so many of our people, the people that pulled the Sanche Duke to Dog and Pony Show was going on and everything, what they did to those people, I won't even want to talk about it. But, it was pretty, the mobs turned on them, and they were real mobs that really went into the streets, and, they did what they did. So, it's happened before.
We don't seem to learn from it, do we?
No.
So Christina, what's the latest about the earthquake there? Have you got any news at all that you can give us?
Well, I've had the live seismic server going pretty much all afternoon. There's been a lot of aftershocks that aren't really being reported, probably because they're under 5s. But it's pretty active still right now. And I guess people who felt the quake said that it was of a very long duration. The shaking went on for about a minute, and I saw a video that was posted just from north of Tokyo. It was just a guy on the street, and people were, crouched down on the ground because they couldn't even stand up. It was shaking so bad. And you see all the cars and the vans that are parked shaking back and forth, and all I could think of was that spent fuel pool, being sloshed around, and it's already, there's so much damage. Did it prove out as a 7.1?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was Australia's earthquake notification center still has it at like a 7.6. So, I mean, it was sizable, that's for sure. It gave them a really big shake. And, right away, within like 20 minutes, TEPCO comes out and says there's no damage. Now, this is the middle of the night over there. Everything's dark and it's raining. And they're already coming out and just saying, why not say that, we'll assess the damage over the next few hours.
Yeah, Reuters went right out and reported, there's no damage when the live cams went down. By the way, there's 2 typhoons going to hit there tomorrow, and look at the names of those typhoons. One's pushing the other one off. But the spent fuel pools in number 4, which are cracked and leaking and burning anyway, I'll guarantee they lost more fuel out of the 4s on a 7.1. I'll guarantee it, because those pools are cracked anyway. Now, I was just watching the live cam. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Kevin.
I was just watching the live cam, and, because TEPCO knocked the live cams down, but then there's the other angles over there, the other cams. I was just watching, saying, telling people, if you got any smoke coming out of them, let me know, blah, 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 blah. But that's the whole thing when it's raining like this, and them spent fuel, this whole dog and pony show they're pulling, number 4, we're going to go in and remove the fuel next month, and then we can say, we saved it. It's such a scam. Those pools are cracked, and a lot of them are already dry. They've been in fission since day one. And that's what coming right from the FOIA documents from the NRC themselves. We know this factually. So a quake at 7.1 over there today, I'll guarantee you they spent more fuel onto the floor. And, all those steam that we've seen coming out of number 4 all summer long, that's what it is. I mean, the readings today, by the way, in Hawaii are 165 in Hawaii today. And this is coming right from the guy who worked at RadNet, who sends me the links every day. That's the highest spike since this thing happened, and they're 165 in Hawaii right now. It's been going on
for about 36 hours, actually longer than that now. They've had a sustained plume in that area, and I mean, I've checked for volcanic activity, and there's nothing else going on that would contribute to it. And when you look at the mimic weather maps where you can see the atmospheric river, you can see that it came right from the last typhoon. What's hitting is the edge of that, and it's like curling around and it's going back up. Half of it went to Alaska, and the other half is very slowly moving towards the west coast. So we might see elevated readings there in the next few days. But the problem is, by the time people find out, if it rains, that's going to come down in the rain.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, just like it did in San Francisco.
The fallout is entirely dependent on where the rain falls.
That's right.
And when you start seeing plumes like this without weather on top of it, I mean, there was a lot of stuff that was stirred up there. Now we've got 2 more that are going through. And, it's a mess. In 2 weeks, they're supposed to start the fuel removal from 4. They have a fuel removal going on right now at reactor 6. They've been taking the fuel out of 6 for the last 2 weeks. And nobody talked about this. It got posted yesterday on Simply Info and on World Nuclear News. It took 3 weeks for them to pry the reactor lid off of 6. Now, they said there was no damage to that reactor in the earthquake. So why did they have such a hard time getting the lid off?
That's right.
Well, there's rumors coming out today all afternoon. There's rumors that number 6 has got fires going on in it right now. Now, I haven't said anything, or even posted anything, but these are people that are pretty smart. That's been rumored all afternoon.
Yeah, so. I heard that too. And I watched the stream today for quite a while, but there was so much rain on the lens of the camera that it creates a lot of artifacts that make it really difficult. But I thought that I did see smoke at one point, and a few people that emailed me that I know watch these cameras all the time, and they confirmed that they had seen some smoke too. Now, we don't know where it was coming from. And of course TEPCO hasn't said anything, so all we can really do is watch. You can go to failedrobot.com where they post all the crowdsourced data from Safecast, and we can kind of watch the measurements over the next few hours and the next day or two and see if they go up, and then we know. But, there's something that's been burning in 3 since late July.
Yeah. And we've seen those ratings.
That's what that steam is. And I did an interview yesterday with Loren Murray, and she confirmed, too, with some of these studies that have come out recently about the fused cesium particles that have, never in the history of nuclear power been seen before. We've got like a combined new, radioactive, it's a sphere that they found from this accident because the temperatures were so high and they continue to be high. We don't even know if all that water they're dumping is making any difference. It's just
the only difference the water's making. The only difference the water's making. The only difference is knocking the plume down. That's all that it's ever done. All that has ever done is pushed it from the air to the Pacific, and even then, so much of it into the air jet stream anyway. It's so outrageous that we're still not getting any proper readings out of RadNet. I mean, what are we, 958 days? I mean, it's outrageous, but, this thing has been pushed into the Pacific from day one for 958 days. And it doesn't matter if it's in the Pacific or it's in the air. It doesn't matter. The marine layer rolls into California. Once it's in the food chain, it's in the food chain. And yet we can get no ratings by any government, just so to speak of. And no marine biology departments will give us anything to speak of. So here we are winging it with freelancers and, Geiger counters and relying on logic, because we have nobody with a soul or a conscience in the United States, well, in the world for that matter. Some of the early data that came out, but nothing. It's beyond heartbreaking. If people, and they say, we don't want to panic the public. When I was in San Diego, I met with the marine biologists at the Navy and the Marines, and it's all San Diego economy, San Diego tourism economy. That's all I hear. And that's what the Obama administration took in the Situation Room. Jacko's confirmed it. All about the economy. Which the economy's already crashed anyway. Everybody's broke off their ass anyway. So, this thing is not going away. It's never going away. It's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And the story's going to break loose. Day 958 or day 1864. At some point, the Americans are going to wake up and realize when, if they've got cancer, that's when they wake up.
Kevin, I read something that was privileged recently about the possibility of atmospheric fission. Are you familiar with that thesis or that possibility?
Yes.
Do you think that's a possibility at Fukushima?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Well,
And,
we might as well bury our behinds in the sand if it does.
Well, yeah, but you think about atmospheric fission. I mean, what levels can it happen at? Now, granted, I mean,
they
it
don't
could be
know.
a catastrophic.
They don't. A situation like this has never happened, where you have the cores continuing to fuse indefinitely, committing fission, and you have seawater that they're using to cool it. And that's the worst possible scenario, because that adds to the creation of isotopes.
Right, totally different isotopes that wouldn't have been released otherwise.
Much wider range.
Yes.
Much more.
It synergizes and creates a different isotope that's, on alpha is the word I use.
Yeah,
like tritium, which is the deadliest.
We've had open air fission going on though at that plant since the beginning, and it was first reported a day after I think the first reactor exploded, that the TEPCO workers were seeing neutron beams around the site. And I actually have a picture of one. It looks like this giant blue rainbow over one of the reactors, and it was visualized in 13 different places up to like a mile and a half away.
They picked this up on satellites, so they know. Yeah.
And for months after that, when you watch the TEPCO cameras, you could see these little like rainbow lights that were occurring, like these sparks in the air, and they were different colors. And I talked to a retired physicist about it, and he said, sure, if there's, those reactors are breached, and at the time, we still didn't have confirmation of them being breached. But if they were breached, there's, they
were breached before the tsunami hit. They were breached on the freaking shake. I mean, that's what killed me about this whole thing going forward. Here I've been involved in this thing. Anybody with half a brain that has ever been in the nuclear thesis knows that these things cannot sustain anything over about a 9.6, 9.7, that the core cracks. We know that. When this came out in 9.1, I'm like, I knew it had been cracked, and that's before the tsunami hits. And once that core is cracked, it's on. It's on. It doesn't need to swamp out. It doesn't need to think, and that's exactly what's gone in for the atmospheric fission, all of it. As soon as that quake hit, those things melded together. As soon as they touch together and go together, it's on, and there's no turning it off. You think about what they did in Chernobyl to get to the core. I mean, think about this, really, honestly. Okay, fission going on now for how many days? Pushing down, pushing outwards into the Pacific. And now we're seeing, so much sea life dying. And I mean, the energy, we have the atmospheric fission going, but by pushing the seawater on top of it is just simply knocking it down into the freaking ocean. And I mean, I wish someone would come forward. We knew what the real damage to the ocean was at this point. I think it would be so scary. I really do. I think about it every day, and I'm like, if we knew the truth in the Pacific right now, actually, I mean, I hypothesize, Christina hypothesized, we all hypothesize just by using our knowledge and our logic. But to just sit down and have a study come out and say, this is what's really going on down there. They've got to have divers in there somewhere, and there's, nothing from the Navy, nothing from no one. It's
the only thing being controlled about this accident is us.
Yeah.
You mean the truth?
Yeah. Exactly.
And I can't really see that changing. I see a lot of people putting effort into getting, petitions and, calling their congressmen and all this. And I think it's a waste of time. Yeah. They're not going to do anything. They're not going to go against these corporations. And
the thing is, they're rolling the dice
till everything in the Pacific is dead. I mean that's how bad it's going to have to get before anybody acknowledges it, and they'll probably still lie to us. So I mean, it's up to us and social media to use every avenue that we have to reach.
That's people. It. Our only chance, and I've known this from even before it happened, was our only chance is popular opinion. That is our only chance.
Mm-hmm.
They'll have a flu epidemic that'll kill a lot of people, and they'll blame it on that.
And it's already happening right now. That's what a lot of people don't realize. The cancer rates, my work that I do at my hospital and abroad, cancer rates are going crazy in North America. They are going crazy. Younger, we have a 15-year-old in their AML right now. AML in young females is unheard of. Like I said, young females do not survive this disease. Very rarely. 23 was the youngest we had. We have a 15, we have a 17, we have a 20-year-old in there right now, and it's off the hook. So these rates, the survival rate on cancer, we've gotten so good with medicine on so many different cancers, it reversed itself 2 years ago. We're headed the other way. So the death's happening. It is happening. It's happening right here, right now. And people are in denial.
Cancer is now the leading cause of death in children.
That's a big story. That's a big story. That's the CDC's. The CDC come out with that. That is a big, and if that doesn't alarm the populace, it is horrific. Yeah. I'm a socioeconomist. I watch those numbers like a hawk. It was an automobile accidents and it was gunshot wounds. It really is the thumbprint of a society. And I thought people would go psychotic on that. Well, it came out, I believe, October 19th or the 16th. And really people are like, what, huh? It's amazing to me that people are willing to give their lives. I'm in the hospital. I'm head of our support group. I have people that are dying. Why they're dying? And I'm like, and they're like, God's will, God's will, God's will. I always use Steinbeck, Tim Shell, but it's staggering to me what has happened. Like I said, the control of the world populace, that box has done a number for the last 30, 40, 50 years, and people are they're like hypnotized. I just came back. Go ahead.
I was going to say, what I was impressed by with Andrew's films, to bring him in a wee bit, was how he talked about Japanese culture and why there isn't the pressure within Japan, and because their children, I'm worried about everybody's children right now, but particularly in Japan, what are we going to do for these people? It's the pressure from the outside, yes, and hopefully more shows like this will increase people's knowledge and things, but in Japan, Andrew, would you like to contribute a wee bit there about how you feel with the children, the situation there, culturally?
Well, yeah, with Japan, it's the culture's sort of geared towards people, not questioning authority, and people they'll do their best to help their team, their group, be it their class or their company, but and they'll pull together, but it's all under the aegis of, Mother Goose, the Japanese government. And, that's been manipulated against against them to, produce the outcomes the government wants, which is, largely, silence. But, there was, I think, Fukushima Diary, he's talked about, Mochizuki, he's talked about, there were large protests in the beginning, let's say 100,000, and he's a bit demoralized there. It's going down to, 50, 40,000. There's not that impetus that was there before. But I think, North America and Australia, certainly we have, mind-controlled persons, just like Kevin says, popular culture. Yeah, it's I think that there was that documentary, Radiation Coming to a Town Near You. Do you know that one, Christina, Kevin? Or James?
Yeah, I do.
And the host said, he said, perception is truth for a lot of people. So if you give them real information.
I hate to hear things like that, don't you?
I know, but it's really true. It's like if you tell them, the sea is blue, or the plants are green, that doesn't really matter because they're focused on, what they perceive to be important as being, cars or who they're dating or, making 100,000 a year
debt spiral that they're in. That's where they're at. They're in such a debt spiral. People are so freaking, I'm an economist. I break this so much down to economics. The declining wage of 36 people are working 2 freaking jobs, going to work at 5 a.m. till 6 a.m. They're freaking stressed out wrecks on their debt structure. Trying to pay for that big piece of shit house they got. And so, like I said, the mind control is so easy. It's so easy because I think when you're stressed economically, it's so easy to control a person mentally. Like you said, it doesn't matter to them. Their whole powers are focused elsewhere.
Yeah.
One of the things I saw in your film on Fukushima Beach that amazed me, though, was the documentary that you had on the meeting of these farmers with these bureaucrats. I guess they were bureaucrats, either that or magistrates or whatever. And these farmers were letting them have it. They say, we produce this food, and yet we won't eat it ourselves. You said you were going to clean the ground up, the soil up, and all you did was turn it over. And, and they had their say. Now, do you know what would happen here in the United States if you had a meeting like that? There would be shills in the crowd to call them down. The police would come in and remove them for disturbing the peace or whatever. They would never be allowed to get that far, would they, Kevin?
That's right. That's exactly right. Which, when we grew up, it was the most American thing in the history of this country was to question and to be, I always use cordial conversations are danger, passion, intelligent, arguments get results. Like I said, this is fascism. You can't even raise your voice. I mean, I just had it out. I was protesting over at the Imagine Dragon concert over there just now, and cops that I know, gave me shit for just holding up a banner and me and some people passing out things. And I says, I'm not even raising my voice. They don't even dare let you speak. I mean,
well, they have people so acclimatized that any time there's an argument, and even when you're on a forum and you're discussing something, the first person to act emphatically, they're wrong automatically. It couldn't be because they have the intensity of conviction. It couldn't be because they have the intensity of truth. Oh, no, they raised their voice or they said something emphatic or whatever, and they're conditioned that way. Since when did this come about?
30, 40 years. It came about, I always talk about it, the day Bobby Kennedy was killed. The progressive movement was over, and, we took that soft approach. And it really is. You're absolutely right. It really is. You're wrong to be passionate. Look at my videos, for instance. That's why I do them the way that I do. I mean, I teach this subject matter. I taught the communication subject matter here at this university for years. And this came about the last 30, 40 years. This country surely was never that. It was the opposite of that. I mean, Abraham Lincoln used to write about it over and over about the intensity of the argument in the courtroom and on the Senate floor. And now, like you said, raise your voice. Not only are you wrong, you're some kind of crazy, you're a radical, and you need to be put in a prison cell. So who's got the field? If none of those guys are, the passive aggressives have the field. That's why I go off on this thing with the hairspray. It's like this. Oh, it's on NPR. The Pacific is being poisoned. All the dolphins are dead. The starfish are dead. The humans are dying. Let's check the weather now. And people are like, really? Yeah. I mean, this country has lost all passion and all desire. It's spilled over into sexuality. It's spilled over into, economics. But the crowning jewel, the environment. That's where everybody says, Kevin, you dropped the ball on economics and finance here at the university and everything. And I'm like, yeah, because nothing else matters. Why would I give a damn about? I mean, Fukushima's in the jet stream. Are you kidding? I have cancer. Hello, I tell people this every day. Do you understand? I'm full of cancer. What? And people just, I'm blown away at the apathy in this country. Like I said, the passion is gone.
Kevin, can I ask you? Sorry, can I ask you and our other guests about groups like Greenpeace, because I thought Greenpeace would be all over this after 3/11. I mean, you look at their website and then you click on oceans, and there's nothing there about Fukushima at all. Pacific Ocean.
Well, get this, Andrew. I have a video. I have a video, and I have been hesitating to put it up because my attorney says you can't put that video up. When I was in San Diego this summer, I had it out with a young activist on Huntington Beach Pier, on Pacific Beach Pier. And I had him call, what's his name, the head of Greenpeace. He lives up in the trestle, and he came down. And because I was going off on him, and he told me to lower my voice, anyway, blah, blah. It turned into the end, he got really physical. Me and him almost fought. Wow. And I'm like, where are you guys? Where are you guys? And, you're using these grants. They're nothing but they've they've evolved to the Sierra Club, Greenpeace. They are nothing but cash cows for these people at the top. They've went the same way as everything. You got to see the house that dude lives in. Same with the guy they had at Sierra Club. They turned into fundraising organizations. So he told me, here's exactly what he told me. He says, Kevin, we have a flyer that goes out to our website once a week, and we rank the top 10 issues that people want us to address. And Fukushima hasn't made the top 10 yet. And I says, so you're about fundraising. You're not about leading. You're not about telling them what the most important issue is. You're letting them tell them, so you're all about fundraising.
Yeah,
and that's what they are.
They're diversifying so they can increase their funding.
$20.
I wouldn't even give them that much of an excuse. I would say they're gatekeepers. The people that had these organizations up get corrupted and become gatekeepers. They hold the truth in and turn it and twist it to suit their own pocketbook.
War profiteers. I call them war profiteers.
Behind any of these groups too. I mean, if you notice, like the people who are being the loudest, who are putting out the most information, are the ones that aren't getting paid to do any of this. You know, they're doing it out of, you know, using their own funds, you know, digging, you know, into their own pockets to try to fund themselves and stay away from that, because you know, you don't even want to go down that road. It always, you know, then you have people that want to tell you what to talk about and what to say. And, so it is, any organization that receives any kind of funding, and that includes activists, are the last people that I get information from.
Well, you know, I knew Wallace Stegner personally, really well. And Stegner, you know, he grew the Sierra Club into and he was an amazing man, and I'll tell you what, the Sierra Club and Greenpeace did incredible work in the 70s and the 80s. Incredible work. I mean, what they were able to, you think about the Environmental Act of 1970, passed 333 to 1. I mean, that was so far sweeping, and they were powerhouses. When they used to go out into the boats, into the ocean, and, you know, getting the tanks of uranium off the coast of England thrown at them and freaking hit them, they were the real deal. You know, it's a cultural problem. It's the baby boomer, echo boomers. They're so self-indulged. They've become this society of just competing on, you know, their things, their house, how big of a house. None of them have any real love for the environment or no real love for humanity. When back in those days, those people existed. I mean, Walt Stegner loved humanity. He was a writer. He was a beautiful poet. He loved the environment. He loved humanity. He loved people. All anybody loves anymore is money. That's all they love anymore. And it's from A to Z. And so here you got a few, Christina, you know, Jan, you know, myself, Andrew, a few of us out there who, I mean, all working for free. My God, I was in critical condition doing these videos for 269 days. And we're doing this because we love humanity, we love the environment, and that's what gives me hope on this thing, because I see there are other people. There is really a grassroots movement among people out there. Now, granted, it's a small, tiny, you know, group with no rewards, but that we're here, where we're talking right now. There are people out there, and they are really trying, but is it too late? I don't know, man. As long as this is going, maybe it is too late.
Yeah, I had a friend, he's in Sea Shepherd, you know, they go chasing whaling boats wherever across the Pacific, and I would post on, you know, my personal Facebook to him all the stuff that's happening in Fukushima, and no reply at all. Just like going on about you know, the carbon tax we had to have, and you know, all those
GMOs, that's the big one that kills me all over. I'm in Oregon. They booed me in Oregon when I did my post-ignorance on Tuesday. You know, Jack Dresser, I did that video, but I mean, there was a lot of people that showed up at my post-ignorance gig, and I was actually booed by little old ladies. The lady tried to knock the thing out of my hand. All I want to talk about it, but the kids roared. But I'm like, how can you talk about GMOs? They get huge turnouts for these GMO prices. I think radiation on your food's a little worse than a GMO. Now, granted, they're horrible, but how can you be protesting a GMO when the plume from Fukushima's all over all your food? I mean, it's I don't know. I don't even know the word that you would use. You know, beyond ignorant.
Kevin, one of the things that I appreciate about Lauren Mhairead is she was the very first to come out and talk about the use of chemtrails the use of Fukushima as binary weapon systems.
Yeah.
And you don't know what, for instance, with the chemtrails, you don't know what is in them from one day to the next. They're a delivery system. And used in conjunction with fallout from Fukushima, they can make a legal concoction that they use in one area and then blame that on flu or blame it on something else, and people are falling over dead.
Well, you think about it,
there's a trigger to this.
Yes. You think about it. It's ignorant to think. I mean, we look at all the spine, coming out, they're tapping Merkel's phone, but we think about the military, the government, the complex, what they're up to think that they're not experimenting with every angle and everything they could possibly use is being naive. Of course they are.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, we're coming
up.
I
don't go down those. Go ahead.
I was going to say we're coming up for a wee break, if that's okay with everybody. So, yes, I think.
Can we talk among ourselves?
Yeah, I've been thinking about how, I was a derivative trader for so long, so I've been very good my whole life at hypothesizing situations forward. That's what I've done my whole life. And I'm really struggling right now. I've really had a handle, I thought, on how this was going to play out, but I thought at some point, I really did think at some point there would be some, people come forward and break this and, something would happen and something, the United States military would move in. The Navy or somebody would, it's too late, but at least try. And I really thought this would break the back of nuclear. I really did think at some point this was going to break the back of nuclear. And I seen a poll the other day that 65% of Americans are still pro-nuclear energy.
I don't believe it.
I don't either. I don't believe it either. I would like to ask everybody that's on the panel or, here we're talking. This is the one thing that I cannot get through my mind. Do any of you think that there are special forces over there via the Navy? I brought it up to the Navy when I was down there. Do you think they have teams in there? Divers in the water. Do you think there's things going on that we do not know about as far as the United States military at Fukushima?
Yes. Yes, I do.
I interviewed a gentleman on my show that is a retired major, William Fox, and he said that the United States government, through the military, knows where every radioactive particle is. They are watching it with satellites.
Golly.
Good grief.
Yeah, but we're watching with satellites too, but I'm talking about people that are actually with a plan, divers in there, because this thing's out of control. It's beyond it. That's the understatement of the century. Mm-hmm. When I met with the Navy when I was in San Diego. They searched me, wouldn't let me videotape anything, and we talked about the fight that went on in the Situation Room with the military and the Department of Energy. Now, we know, I reported it, and it came out that Briner from Cal Berkeley, and now it's public domain, that there was a 32-panel team put together in the Situation Room, put together by the president, and he is running that show. And it's being run out of Cal Berkeley, and there's 32 members on it. Now, I know for a fact, I'm heavily involved with the Marine culture. I'm in that family. I know for a fact that the Navy and the Marine is going to war over Fukushima. They're fighting tooth and nail with the Department of Energy, and the Department of Energy won out in the early days. In the USS Reagan, they were all sent in. And it goes even much further than that. And Jacko's confirmed it himself. You listen to Gregory Jacko, and he, when you listen to him, people have to be careful too and realize that he cannot cross the line. He was in the Situation Room. He'll be worse off than Snowden if he crossed the line. You can hear him get on the line when he's speaking. The Department of Energy is a cabal of evil from hell. And they have power even over the Navy and the Marines. And this is coming from the Navy down there, the personnel and the Marines that I have. They wanted in. They had the people in the early days, and it was the Department of Energy, which is, by the way, it's the Department of Nuclear, has pushed them to the side. And that's who's running the show. When Gina McCarthy runs RadNet and then all of a sudden becomes the new head of the EPA, Ernest Monsey, these guys are all nuclear. They're all in nuclear. And, so I don't know what kind of roll of the dice the nuclear industry is playing. I mean, that this is just somehow going to go away and we're going to keep building plants. I mean, we got one ready to go online in Georgia. And so I think, personally, I believe that the Navy and Marines, they're pushed to the side. You know, they may have some special forces in there doing something, but I don't think there's shit going on over there. I think the Department of Energy is taking the thing, we're going to roll the dice, and we're going to prove to all these anti-nuclears, hey, look, Fukushima went on for 4 years, and TEPCO did get it underhandled, and we only killed a few fish, and we only killed a few people. See? That's what I think they're playing, personally. I think that's exactly what they're playing.
They got away with their corrects in the Gulf of Mexico, and they probably think they can get away with it here, but no, they can't. It is too vastly out of control. No.
That's right. They're not going to get away with it. But I think that's what they're playing. I think they really are I think that is the arrogance of the Department of Energy. I don't think they're doing shit. And I think
who they work for, Kevin? They work for the throne of England.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
you hear me go off on all day, the queen.
Yeah, she has most of the uranium. She owns most of the uranium deposits in the world.
Oh, I can get so deep into that freaking angle, and it's true. It's absolutely true. She's all uranium. That's who's running this show.
Yeah, I'm saying nothing.
You know, I was very surprised the mountain I use behind my videos, a lot of people don't know this, and I don't tell a lot of people this. That is Ben Lomond Peak. You know, the Federal Reserve is named after Mariner Arrows, who pretty well raised me. And, you know, if you're over there in Scotland, you know, they're Scots. And I teach this at this university, all about this, and, you know, unite the clans, William Wallace, and I'm telling you, they're getting rid of tariffs, and people don't understand when I go back to Hamilton, by the way, who's a Scot from Scotland, and I go back to Hamilton, and we fought this, you know, we fought against the freaking Queen in 1774, and that's what this is. We gave it all back. We got rid of tariffs, we got rid of usury laws, and they are all in uranium. I mean, that's their bit. It's not even the nuclear industry, it's the uranium. You know, the depleted uranium in every single weapon there is. And, you know, what did I read? Her net worth has gone up. I'm an hedge fund guy. Her net worth over the last 20 years has went up 18,000% because of
trillions
uranium.
and trillions of dollars. And, you know, but that's just the beginning of what they control.
Rio Tinto right here, the open pit mine, they got 32% of it right here. I mean, I don't know if any of you have ever flown over here and looked at that hole in the freaking earth right here. When you do my videos from the Capitol, that in the background, that big hole, that's the Rio Tinto open mine. You know, so.
Well, have you seen what they've done about what Climax Mines has done above Leadville?
Oh yeah.
They've actually totally leveled mountains there for molybdenum.
Yeah, they're gone.
Yeah.
That's where we're headed. That's exactly where we're headed. And so, like I said, I don't think they care. I don't think if they, I think they would think if, say, they wiped out 20% of the world population. I think they could give a rat's ass. Like, yeah, so. Yeah. I think they're that cold-hearted.
Well, it came clear to me back in the 70s when I was going up to Colorado and spending my summers in Utah and Colorado every year that I knew people in Leadville, and I was trying to promote some silver mines there. And all of the little towns that had ski resorts, the absenteeism rate of all the children in the schools was off the charts because of the mercury sulfate that they were seeding the clouds with so they would get the powder snow.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that?
During the Olympics here? Oh, I live right here. I'm looking right at right here where I live. You know, that's the Olympic downhill. I grew up on that road. During the Olympics, what they did here, and then they come out and admit it, and everybody's like, oh, really? I mean, what they put into the atmosphere for the Olympic, and, you know, over and over and over. And they come out and admit they do it here. And people are still like, oh, whatever.
Yeah, well, Dennis still try and justify putting mercury in people's teeth.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed here was an increase in the chemtrails over Europe after Fukushima, after 2011. It's gotten much, much worse, and I wonder if there is a connection.
That was
the connection is this.
Well.
it condenses, it compresses the molecular atmosphere over that point, so that it's catching more of the isotopes and bringing them down to Earth there. That's your connection right there.
Well, here's the thing. The Fukushima is where I think they freaking went too far. I really believe the 3/11/11, they went too far. Because, one of my doctors is Steve Jobs' doctors. And everybody says, Steve Jobs was a cancer paranoid freak. He didn't take baths. He wouldn't shower because, he was crazy. And they did 3 transplants on him. They did 2 liver transplants and an experimental pancreatic cancer. Hey, these assholes who are in the Department of Energy and these cash cows and these, so-called 1% royalty oligarchs, whatever you want to call them, they're not above getting cancer and dying, and neither are their kids. And when Fukushima's into the, which it is into the food chain, period, they're not above it. They're not above it. And so I know for a fact that a lot of people with a lot of power in a lot of high places, they're just as nervous as you and I about cancer, and everybody should be, especially the younger you are.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing. It affects the youth much worse than it affects the older people.
Well, we're seeing in our hospital here, young females, 20, 15, 18, 23, 26, 27. I mean, that was unheard of. AML in a young female, AML is a man's disease, a working class man, benzene, whatever. I mean, my doctor says it's up 1,600% in the last decade in young, and I'm telling you, they do not do well. And so here it is.
Especially after they lose their thyroid.
Yeah, which, you walk around here, I tell everybody, walk around here and just look. We call it the Utah smiley face. Everybody calls it the Chernobyl necklace now. I call the scar on me the Fukushima fishhook. I call that one. But that's the thing, I think that this trumps all of that, because Fukushima is into the entire food chain and the entire, I don't care where you live in the world. I don't care where you live.
You're
Radiation is
right.
there.
Yes.
And they're not above it. Their children are above it.
Well, you try to explain to people it's accumulative. And it's accumulative lifelong.
Mm. Well, think about my case. My father, a specimen, an incredible physical specimen. Nuked in the Nevada test site, and then I was conceived after. And they tell, it cannot mutate through the genetic pool. Then I get the exact same diseases. Well, look at me. If I'm not living proof that it doesn't, I get the exact disease as him at about the same age.
Look at all the children that were born to these Gulf War veterans that came down with all sorts of illnesses. They came down with the Gulf War syndrome too.
Yeah. But we don't talk about it. There's a lot of blood on a lot of people's hands. The CDC, the World Health Organization, the UN, these so-called, marine biologists, of course, the media. What they've done, there's so much blood dripping from so many people's hands. I keep thinking, when is somebody going to step forward and say, enough is enough. I term it black and yellow journalism. What Gupta did in the early days, he's a practicing neurosurgeon. When is somebody going to stand up and come out, an institution, a group of people?
They kill them as fast as they do. One group that would know this, that would know exactly what they were looking at under their microscope, are microbiologists. And in the last 15 years, there have been thousands of them literally die from suspicious deaths. Mm-hmm. Either suicided or hit by a truck when they were crossing the street, or just very suspicious deaths, but there have literally been thousands of them die because they know what they're dealing with. You can compartmentalize everything but that kind of science. You give a little task, you don't know what the overview is, you don't know what the weapon you're creating, but the microbiologists, they know how virulent what's under their microscope is.
Well, the data's out there. I've read the 40,000 Marine study over and over and over. They all died. I've read it online over and over. The dean here at the university says, Kevin, the nuclear industry hates you so bad, I think they mailed you leukemia in the mail. And I always laugh, and I said, they didn't have to. They gave it to me before I was born. And he's like, yeah, you're right.
As long as they're getting paid, they're not going to talk.
That's it, because they just worship the dollar. They're in their ivory tower, and they've got their pyramid, their wife, their kids, their family, and everybody's just structured around it, and they're not about to let that topple.
Well, so many of the policymakers are involved in occult rituals, and the purpose of the occult ritual is to devise loyalty. And these crazy SOBs are worse than you can imagine. I've met some of them.
Oh yeah, me too. I could get so deep into that. I teach the freaking secret societies culture here, you know. By the way, our school's named the E.O. Owada School of Business here, #1 school of business in the country. And I asked the guy who's teaching my old class, U.S. Economic History, I'm like, what are you teaching about EO? Who? What? And I'm like, God, no wonder everybody's here is getting cancer. He was a 33-degree Mason, probably the most powerful Mason in the Western United States. But, you know, in our university, by the way, if people knew what I do at this university, is our university is almost totally 100% funded by General Electric. And so Utah Construction, Hoover Dam, is this university, which I could go into that, which came from Scotland, by the way. David Eccles came from the Kedunskins, the slums of Glasgow, to be one of the richest men in the world in just 30 years, robber baron here. And then Utah Construction was bought by General Electric, Weber State right here, 1971, and it made this whole town filthy. And that is our university. And General Electric that's the cabal of evil right there. Right there.
Them in Westinghouse.
Yes, which is Toshiba. You know, don't you think it's ironic? Toshiba buys Westinghouse. Now I'm a finance guy. When one parent company buys the other company, the parent company takes control of the board of directors and the CEO, the whole structure. Well, Toshiba bought Westinghouse, and look who the board is. It
stayed the same.
Yeah, you know why they did that? And people don't realize that's what Fukushima is over there.
It was a dodge.
It's a dodge to dodge American law. That's exactly what it was. That's exactly what it was. The dodge to teaching, go into the Japanese thesis over there and do whatever they do whatever they want over there. And of course they do whatever they want here too, but so people think, TEPCO, you think about this front of TEPCO running this thing. What a joke. It's General Electric and Westinghouse. They're running the freaking operation over there.
That's right.
TEPCO is just...
Right. They built it.
TEPCO's a handful of slaves over there. You know, they're finding anybody they can to go over there and work, and say, oh, it hasn't killed anybody. You know how many of those original people are already dead that were in there? If we knew the story...
Half of them.
Yeah. One likely. I like it when the original Fukushima 50, the Ted, and his mother sent me an email like 2.5 months before he died, and I did a video saying, he's gonna die, and everybody says, oh, you're crazy, blah, blah, and he dies, and then they come out, oh, he died, and it had nothing to do with freaking the radiation. I'm like, and that's Reuters, CNN, all of them report it had nothing to do with it. And I'm like, really? And people believe that shit?
Yeah.
It just shows you the American populace is their own worst enemy.
Well, you can talk to people about radiation, X-ray radiation, beta gamma radiation. You can talk to them until you're blue in the face. They'll walk away from you and forget everything that you said, even though they were nodding like they understood it, because they don't want to know. They don't want to know what they've been exposed to.
That's it.
Yeah.
It just blows their minds.
What blows my mind is that after Chernobyl, they didn't shut down every single reactor on this planet. And I know it's all corruption. All of it is total and complete corruption.
Well, think about 1982, 85% of the United States population was anti-nuclear everything. 85%. The protests at Central Park, 1.2 million. All over the country. So Chernobyl just happened 4 years after. You would think that would be the end. But that's when the World Health Organization, the IEA, they spent $4 billion. $4 billion in the propaganda war. And that's when they went to work and infiltrated all the media. That's when they got smart. And so just in logical sense, you would think that would be the end of nuclear. That would be the end of nuclear. And the opposite happened. We went from 85% anti-nuclear to 65% pro-nuclear in 10 years in the courts of public opinion in the United States. That was a propaganda war that was waged on us. And it was done by the IEA, the World Health Organization, the UN, of course, Price-Anderson, that law. A lot of people don't know in 2005, They tried to, this Price Anderson case made it all the way to the United States Supreme Court to overturn it. Now, without Price Anderson, there is no nuclear. That guarantees it. That gives them all the funding, backdoors it all. Well, think about the United States Supreme Court. I mean, that court's corrupt by definition. George Bush did not win. Alito and Roberts should, if that court would, every decision would be going the opposite of what they're going. Alito and Roberts were placed by an illegitimate president who did not win. And so
the last time that I was approached to join the Illuminati, it was by email, and I didn't know for certain that it was anything more than a hoax. But I have been approached before personally, and the last time that I was approached, I kind of played along with it because I wanted to find out whether they were hoaxing me or not. And in the final email that I got from them, where they're explaining how prestigious being a member is and all that crap, and that I would get $20,000 just to sign my name, they have the Supreme Seven, and it's the 7 justices on the Supreme Court that are Illuminati. He shows their picture together with the Illuminati symbols above them.
Well, you think about it, these secret societies have always existed, and it's always been one place that's fought it back. The United States. We fought it back during the Civil War. We fought it back over and over and over and over, we fought it back. And that's why I go clear back to Hamilton. That's why I always go to Hamilton. That power and those structures have always been there, but the United States was the beacon light. We took it away from them. We pulled it from them. We pull it back.
If you're a student of history, you know that during civil wars and during wars between nations, many times, especially in Europe, there were Jesuit expulsions, there were Illuminati expulsions, there were Masonic expulsions, but that doesn't happen anymore because they have inroads into all the institutions, and they have payoff. They pay off judges and
their fingers are everywhere. General Electric, their fingers are everywhere. Look what they've done. But just think about this, and I tell people, and I used to tell my students this, when I was still doing some teaching right before I got cancer, and I would say, I was talking about the marine biology departments clear back then. I was talking about how academia had been hijacked as far as marine studies coming out of the ocean.
Yeah.
Now, okay, we go clear back then. I think I got cancer on day, 7 months. I think day 222 or something is when I got cancer. We're day 900 and something? 58? 960? I don't know, but not one single study coming out of the ocean by any of these marine biologists. So their fingers have to be in all these universities. Now, to think that, you think that would be impossible, wouldn't you?
No.
This just proves it. It's not impossible.
You've been a graduate student. You know how it works. Yeah. You know how political it is. Yeah.
Yes.
You know how it works. So no. I had the work done for a PhD, but I knew that I wasn't the political animal to get along with my group of
peers, the reviewing.
Peers, we call them something else here, but with my committee, and I wasn't going to get along with, especially this one professor of history, and so I just whenever I ran out of my VA support, the VA was paying for my education. When I ran out of that, I just decided, I don't need this. So I stepped away. But
you think about it, the whole gig with academia, the whole gig with, nuclearism, this whole thing has kind of grown up together hand in hand with the media. It's just, it hasn't been around that long, and it's been in symphony together. And, 311 should have broke it down. I mean, it should have backed it out.
Well, it would have if we'd had any truth in reporting from the media whatsoever. It would have. I believe it would have. But they stonewalled, and they keep stonewalling now. And, I've suggested to people that if you would stop buying anything advertised on ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox, if you'd stop doing that and let them know, I'm not buying another product that I see advertised on your network, then it would have some impact. But, of course, what's happening...
a huge impact, because have you seen their poll numbers, all of them? They're off cliffs. Nobody watches them anymore. Everybody's on everybody gets all their news from the internet.
That's right. That's right.
No, I mean, I watched those polls. They are off a cliff. People have had it with them. They didn't like that. Still, even when we tell them the truth on Fukushima, like you said, people don't want to know the truth when it comes to radiation. It's true. It's true. They don't want to know. They can't wrap their minds around this. I mean, it's just too frightening for them. And they don't. So
there's a diabolical aspect to this. Do you know that within the first 10 days that Fukushima had the plume, the first 10 days, all of the pharmacies in America were told to take potassium iodide off their shelves.
Yeah.
Do you know that?
Which it doesn't work anyway. I used to teach this even before Fukushima happened. The iodine's not going to do shit for you.
Well, the potassium iodide will stay in the thyroid. It'll saturate the thyroid and keep the iodine 131 out. Bit.
Yeah, but
if you take it regularly, but you got to take it every day.
But it'll still mask it. The whole thing when Fukushima happened, I always go back to. I go back to everybody's sick and tired of hearing it from me. On Shante Gupta. Here he is, a neurosurgeon, nominated to be the, Surgeon General. He turned it down because he wanted to keep his practicing. Sanjay Gupta, MD, the 26th of March. He's over there. Him and Anderson Cooper are reporting live from CNN, and as soon as the wind shifts back over the mainland, they get out and come home. Yeah. His show that morning, I read it over and over and over. His show that morning, he puts on two people. One is this Donald Weaver, this piece of shit from Michigan, this photographer who claims he's been in Chernobyl. He goes on to this whole big dog and pony show how Chernobyl wasn't nearly as bad as everybody thought, and it's already cleaned itself out, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh my, I almost fell off the chair. And then he puts a doctor from Japan on. Oh, radiation's not bad. Radiation actually, I found out that radiation doesn't just kill people. Radiation cures people. And I'm like, I nearly fell off. I've read it online so many times that people are sick of listening to it. That's when I knew right then. That's when I knew the conspiratorial nature to this. I was like, oh my God, no. Right then, that day, I remember I was like I'd been slugged in the freaking guts. I knew right then.
What about that loon that came on television in Japan and said, all you needed to do to protect yourself from the radiation was smile?
Yeah. Made it through their laugh or cry.
I remember.
Hey, Andrew, I wanted to ask you something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, I've always been fascinated with the dynamic after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Mm-hmm. And, we didn't hear nothing over here, It was just a propaganda war so big that nobody, because I like art, and that art that was done after that, which I really got turned on to it now. No museums ever showed it. I put it on my website all the time now. What was the real true culture in Japan, after, say 30 years after those two bombs, as far as, is it like now, just don't talk about it?
Nuclear weapon. Yeah, that area is actually a complete black hole in my knowledge. Helen Caldicott's spoken of how the Japanese didn't want nuclear technology, but it was quote unquote forced upon them. So yeah, I'm not really sure about the dynamics about what happened there, but it's just weird.
You've never heard anybody speak about it, I mean, how many people leukemia has got to be off the hook still to this day because, the bombs went off there. It's like here in Utah. Everybody, they want to talk about downwinders in past tense. Plutonium's half-life is 24,000 years in the minimum. So there's more people dying today in Utah from the open air test in Nevada in the 1950s than there was in the 70s. And same in Japan, I would think. I would think leukemia's got to be, huge over there.
Yeah, the ironic thing is that I think Utah suffered more than Japan because at Nagasaki and Hiroshima, you had, devastating, but they were discrete single blasts. Yeah, 2 bombs. I mean, they were small by comparison. And you did have radiation effects and diseases in those localized areas, say around Hiroshima and Nagasaki, for sure. But as you say, in Utah, 350 tests. I mean, beyond the people who were vaporized, which is a crime in itself, and was terrible. But beyond that, I mean, it was just that 2 nuclear blasts of minute scale when you look at Utah and open air testing. Yeah, so
the U.S. government had actually done a survey of what cities they were going to bomb, and they had a list of 10 cities, and they chose cities that had not had any damage from the war because they wanted a clean experiment so that they could go in there after the blast and they could measure the shadows of the people that were pulverized. They could do all these things, and they didn't want any interference from any other type of damage. So they picked 2 cities that hadn't been touched by war.
Andrew in his documentary, The Bombing of Kyoto, and he's right here on the phone, which I think is brilliant. When you called out Stimson and honeymooned over there is the only reason that didn't. All my economic history knowledge, and I have a huge brain as far as economic history knowledge, I did not know that story. You're the one that taught me that story, and I was overwhelmed at what that was the reason they saved Kyoto. And the only reason is because, him and his wife liked to honeymoon there, or they would go over there and went on their honeymoon. I mean, it's a crazy, crazy story because, we can talk about the Illuminati, we can talk about these powers there be, but it still comes down to personal choices and people. And your documentary, when you did the bombing of Kyoto, really calls that out, that it really comes down to personal, biases and personal, people still make choices, just like the Situation Room when, Gregory Jacko's in there. And by the way, I know Alison McFarland personally. Her and I, right on this university I'm standing right now, have gone at it for years. I know her very well. And, she was an anti-nuker. I thought she was our friend, but when Jacko comes out of the Situation Room, there were decisions that were made in that Situation Room. And, people made choices. And those choices, and we're living with the consequences of those choices that were made. So no matter what any powers there are, it's still just like in your documentary when you talk about why they didn't bomb Kyoto. It was his personal choice. And, so these are still people making these choices.
Yeah, the thing about Stimson is it's a very difficult subject because Stimson was no angel in the same way in the same sentence because he and Leslie Groves presided over making the bomb and also deciding to firebomb and bomb those Nagasaki and Hiroshima as well. And Kyoto was something that I think he held dear to his heart. So he said, we're going to go ahead with the Manhattan Project. We'll bomb the Japanese population with napalm and atomic weapons. But I'll just have this little enclave of Kyoto that I will save. But he presided over the bombing of the rest of Japan. So, it was fascinating because he chose to save Kyoto, but he made up for it, in evil terms. In other places, you could say.
By the way, I'll tell you something, Greg. I did that documentary. I did that little piece where I went out to the, to the hangar where the Enola Gay flew out of, which I go out there all the time. Do you know who was going to do that with me, and they backed out right at the last minute? No. I know Jepson. He lives here. That's the guy that pushed the button and dropped him.
Really?
And I know him. Yeah, and I know his daughter really well too, and she was going to go with me and do it, and then she backed out at the last minute. He actually he came to one of my lectures here years ago, and he's from here, right here in Utah. So that whole thing,
Jepson?
Jepson, the guy who actually pushed the button when they were over the top. Oppenheimer's giving him the orders, but he's the guy who pulled the plug. That's him.
Wow.
He's still alive. He's old, very, very old, but and he's right here. And so it all comes, I always talk about that painting that I did, the nuclear triangle, and I did that before. Russia, Japan, the United States. It really is a triangle. It really comes back full circle all the time, right here to Utah and, back to Japan You know, and of course the Russia thesis, you can't make this shit up that happened at Fukushima. And now it's coming back all over us. And, you know, when I go off on this and say, hey, it's much safer to live in Tokyo than it is in San Francisco or, you know, Salt Lake City, Utah, I mean it. I really mean it. I mean, people don't get that the plume is over us, the jet stream from left to right. You know, Christina's in Michigan. I tell everybody, go back to the book, Richard Miller, Under the Cloud. He's in Utah, 1986. When we did these open air tests, he went all over the United States and where it rained, just like she says, where it rained. He studied for 10, 15 years the incident of thyroid and AML leukemia, where it rained off the government maps. And those numbers, I mean, that book's out there. I talk to, Carol Gallagher all the time. She's alive and well. I talk to her every day, you know, who wrote American Ground Zero. That data proves that, you know, what we're saying as far as the cancer and where it rains in the United States, we are the victims of Fukushima. We really, truly are.
Yeah, when you first said it, I was like, really? But then I thought, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's blowing that way. But it was hard to just conceive when you first said it. But then it sort of dawned on me that, yes, that's true, you know.
I think it's going to equalize, though, as the Japanese continue to eat fish from the Pacific.
Yes.
Yeah.
And not only that, you got these two tsunamis. They're pushing, you know, they're just scattering freaking. Those things are wide open. These 110 mile an hour winds just blow across that whole
the typhoons.
Mainland. They're getting hammered. Right
I'd
now,
like to know what the Chinese attitude towards all this is.
Yeah.
We had this conversation. I did another interview today, and that's all we talked about. Now, a lot of people don't know this, and I'm going to start getting this out more in my videos. I got some people that are going to participate. China is pushing back on freaking nuclear right now, and it's Westinghouse who's, you know, still pushing it. You know, they banned the fish right off the get going into China. China is really blowing back because of Fukushima, and now we don't hear that in the American media, but I have friends that are over there in Hong Kong who fled, you know, Japan, and that's who I did the interview with earlier, and they're saying, oh no, the culture in the, you know, so-called royal family over there, they're blowing back and pushing back against, you know, nuclear. I mean, you remember, it wasn't just a few years ago, they were supposed to be putting on a nuclear plant a month by 2012. I don't see any of them going on.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, Russia and China both banned the fish right off the get. We don't hear about it here. Well, again, this control of we don't hear about anything. It's like that study I read out of Germany. And, at University of Arizona, I read that study online. Nobody here even knows that study. People in Europe know that study. You know, so there are international studies, but it's staggering, the control of the media here. And nobody will, I mean, it blows my mind.
It's happening here as well, Kevin. I mean, I think people are surprised by what you were saying about Germany pulling back, because they've got, state-of-the-art nuclear facilities there, haven't they? I mean,
Think about Merkel's.
They're all built by the same people. They're all built by the same people.
Westinghouse as well.
Even at Chernobyl, they were built by the same people.
Yeah. But you think about Merkel, when she came out right after Fukushima, they came out and I was involved with the team who did the studies. I was involved with the economic nuclear team who did the studies. The IAEA was telling them it was going to cost $2 billion a plant. It was going to cost $200 billion to decommission the plants in Germany. And we're like, no, it's going to cost about $200 million. And they came out, and she said right after Fukushima, we're done. And they had some of the most technological nuclear plants in the world ready to go online. She says, no, they pulled them back, and they've shut them down. And same in Switzerland, they're doing it. China's backing out. You think about what's gone on in Italy. A lot of people don't know this. You know how Italy stopped it? You know? Well,
yeah, I saw that news story about somebody was kneecapped, I believe.
That's exactly right. Yeah. The anarchs, the mob went over there and kneecapped him. And you think that's new? That's been going on in Italy and Spain for 35 years. Every time they've tried to amp up nuclear again, they went in there and whacked them. And it's happened over and over. And I ain't kidding you. That's been going on for 30, 40 years over there. But the world's backing out of nuclear, but you know, it doesn't matter now that Fukushima's, you know, the thing that worries me the most, you know, we don't cure this, we don't cure this. What happens when we get another one?
That's right.
You know, say we get one. Well, let's say we get one here in the United States, which it's going to happen. It's not a matter if, it's when. I can't believe it. We've waited this long. You know, that accident that happened in San Onofre.
Kevin, we may not have waited this long. We have had accidents that have not been reported. We've even had military accidents.
Oh, tons of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, people still to this day don't know that San Onofre got shut down. It wasn't because, you know, I've been working on that San Onofre shutdown for 40 years. But it was they had a 12-day accident there that plumed into the atmosphere. People in San Diego and the most hardcore anti-nukers, you tell them that, they still don't even know that. And then I send them the, you know, NRC and the FOIA document leaks, and they're like, oh my God. I'm like, hello? You know, I was organized that through my room with a central line in critical condition. And these guys were coming to me. We had an accident there.
Yeah.
And like I said, we have them all the time here, and they don't get reported. People don't know.
One of the secrets about Nagasaki and Hiroshima, both of those blasts were atmospheric.
They were.
They used parachutes. They used parachutes on those bombs.
That's right.
And they had them set where they'd go off at 3,000 feet so the fireball would go down before it came up and get the maximum kill.
Yeah, that's right.
And the reason I know that is that my father developed those parachutes.
Wow.
Oh, uh-huh. Hey, you know, speaking of that, and I did that Fugo Me Not, you know, the Fugo bombs, you know, a lot of people don't realize that Japan was spending those hydrogen balloons here to the United States, and they were getting here and killing people. But there was one recently found after all those years, not too far from my house out there. You know,
wow.
And, you know, and people here don't even know about those in World War II when they were putting the hydrogen bombs. You know, people don't realize that, I mean, in World War II, people didn't even know that the jet stream existed. I mean, that's why the Doolittle run failed. And then, you know, this Japanese scientist hypothesized that, you know, and he found some ancient writings from some Japanese philosopher about this superhighway up in the atmosphere. So he started building these hydrogen bombs and trying to get them up in the air, and hopefully they'd land in the United States and go off and kill people and start fires. Well, they got here by the thousands of them. It actually killed a reverend named Archie Mitchell in Oregon. Went off and killed his Sunday school class in Oregon. They're scattered all over Oregon and Washington, but that's how good the United States is covering up stuff even back then when they wanted. Nobody knows those stories. They're called Fugo bombs.
Yeah.
And so, you know, a lot of this stuff is so very real that they've been doing. It just makes me wonder, what is it they're up to? Why? I can't wrap my mind around what they are up to by letting Fukushima go. What is their master plan on letting Fukushima go? I mean,
Kevin, they're out of their mind. They're out of their mind. We're talking about psychotics.
Yeah, that's what it is.
We're talking about psychotics. You can't predict a psychopath.
Yeah.
And we have had a degenerating leadership in the world now for 200 years. And it has grown worse and worse, and that is what happens when, you know, at least under a monarchy, you have a chance of getting the king in that's got some sense. But whenever you've got this political machine that is selecting a particular type, schooling them, tailoring them, getting people that have character flaws like Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, and tailoring them into power, and they have character flaws a mile long.
Well, if you think about Bill Clinton, a lot of people don't forget this. He was a Rhodes Scholar. And I used to make my students watch the documentary on Rhodes.
He didn't take it. You know? He didn't take it.
No, he didn't take it, but he was picked. He was still schooled in that economics.
Well, he was groomed by the Council of Governors from the age of 12 because they knew what they had their hands on.
But you think about him the day he signed NAFTA, you could see right where the thesis he was coming from. Again, the Queen. That I call him Bill Walmart Clinton. But, you know, I go back to John Kennedy's speech at the UN. You know,
yes.
And I've read that online over and over. That was the last power, or, you know, Bobby, his death. But John Kennedy stood up to him, and he said, he said that he was afraid of his own military, and he thought there was going to be a coup, and they were going to take him over. But he come out and he said, nope, that's the end of nuclear. We're done. Over. All of it. He stopped the open air test. He was stopping. It would have been over. You and his tragic freaking death, which is coming up 50 years. If he wouldn't have been killed, there would be no nuclear.
No.
Him and Bobby both. There would be no nuclear.
Yeah.
And we just, ever since then, ever since it's just been one, nobody stood up. I did that interview right here at the university with Mike Lee, that piece of shit, and he lied to me, by the way. I got him pinned down. But here in Utah, and then he says, oh, my father died, he was a downwinder, blah. And I'm like, well, maybe I can get some action out of this guy. These people lose own family members and they don't give a shit. You're right, they're psychopaths. He's got to be a psychopath. He knows his father was killed by the open-air test. His father died at like 43 years old. And how can he not understand that? And how can you not care? I watched my father in the body bag, and that's what sent me on this path. I was so pissed off that day. My brother to this day says, Kevin, when are you going to get over it? And I said, don't you get it? I'm never getting over it. I tell everybody I'm living the country and western version of Hamlet. I mean it. Well, curse its spite that I was born to set this right. And I'm not kidding. And my brother's like, get over it. I said, I'm never getting over it.
I know
I'm not going to get over it. And, this is long before I got cancer.
Kevin.
Yeah, they can kiss my ass and I'm going to go down, they're evil. Like you said, they're sociopath, evil bastards. For them to take their very best Marines, march them into the trench, and freaking human guinea pig them and freaking like that right there, and then deny them anything. Just watch them die and say, ha, 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 ha. That's when I realized the United States military and the United States government was run by a bunch of sociopaths. And they are. They're sociopaths. You're exactly right. They don't care.
Yes, they are. It's hard to understand. Go ahead.
Can I just interrupt just 1 minute?
Sure, Mhairead. Go ahead.
Davis just said in chat that they're evacuating Fukushima. Christina, have you got any comments on that?
They did earlier today after the earthquake when there was a tsunami warning.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had a couple of aftershocks. And right now, I don't know what the status is of the employees at the plant, whether they've allowed them to return or not.
Mm-hmm.
But that evacuation is actually from a couple hours ago.
Okay. I'd also like to ask you...
Typhoon's going to hit in the next 24 hours.
Right. So is that what they're pulling people out for that reason as well, I would imagine?
Yeah. And look at the names of both the typhoons. Isn't that ironic? One, wow.
Yeah.
So, but
the tourist agency in Tokyo for tours to China.
Yeah.
The greatest irony of all.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask Christina, because we haven't really chatted at all on Facebook. I just asked her really at the last minute to step in, and I'm really grateful that she's here, because I know she had a sick child to look after as well. How did you get involved in this movement?
Well, I got involved in the movement really to just try to spread the word and connect with other people that were doing the same thing and trying to figure out what was happening at the plant. And it's just, I can't believe the kind of response that we've had when I saw this Fukushima is here, that they did last weekend on the coast of, near San Francisco on Ocean Beach, and there were people in Melbourne, Australia, and in Paris, France, all over that held signs up, and they actually spelled out Fukushima is here on the beach. There was, I think, like 500 people that showed up for that. It was really wonderful to see that, because I know that people are, slowly but little by little, they are learning about this disaster and spreading the word too, and we see every day, like, our numbers just keep going up and up. So I'm very encouraged by that, but it started out really just to try to connect with people and figure out what's going on, and we do that on a daily basis. We're all kind of learning together. No one really has the time to go out and get a nuclear science degree, so we have to do all this research ourselves. And, different people have, a different method for how they present the information. Kevin, puts together the most epic rants, like everything is from the heart from him. And I love to go back and look at his old videos, like from right after it happened, because everything that he said came true. Everything that he predicted, the plutonium in the Pacific, everything has happened. And so we have this like historic record through social media. And, you know, when people come to me now and they're like, you know, I'm just finding out about this and you know, what can I do? They're kind of freaked out because they realize when they do realize the enormity of this situation and how much time has passed, and they've been letting their kids, you know, play in the snow and play in the rain, and, you know, they're worried about it, that it's like it's never too late to really learn about this, but none of us know what exactly we were exposed to in totality. So, you know, it's kind of a way to just share and learn together, and it just keeps kind of branching out in different areas.
So you didn't know anything scientifically before you started this? You didn't have
I never had any formal education, but I have friends and family that work in the industry, and I studied it quite a bit when I was younger because I was fascinated by the Chernobyl accident. And I actually wanted to go there when they opened it up for tourism to take photographs because I was a medical photographer. And then I hurt my back, and I was on a medical leave at the time when the accident happened. So I had a lot of time to read, which helped a lot. And, I mean, you know, there's so much information that's available if you look for it. None of it's getting put out there because, you know, people are paying attention to other things. And so you have to kind of, like, you know, there's kind of a public relations, you know, you almost have to, like, you know, think of what other ways, how else can we attack this problem or talk about this problem or make videos about this problem that will get new people paying attention. And one thing that I did about 6 months ago is I did an interview with Mhairead where we found 10 celebrities, well-known people that have all had recent, very strange health problems that could have all been radiation related, and they were all doing a lot of flying at the time. And you know, Kim Kardashian was one, and Jessica Alba, and Gwyneth Paltrow, and Lil Wayne. And so we did this video, we put it out, and we had over 100,000 views, like, within a month. So, I mean, we got a lot of people interested just from attacking it from that angle, just making celebrities the highlight of it. And I could care less what they're doing, but I know people will pay attention. And these people that live in the West Coast and work in the movie industry and the TV industry, and they're filming outside, and then they're flying a lot because they go to promotions and they go on shoots and they go to, you know, different things. People who are flying are getting exposed more because the radiation is much higher up in the air than it is on the ground. So we know that those people are going to show, those are the groups that will show changes first. So we're watching those people. And in fact, we have 10 or 15 more new ones now, and we're going to be doing another interview about the same thing. And some of these people are like really well-known world championship wrestlers and more singers, Chris Brown, Tone Loc, Rick Ross. All these people have had seizures while performing within the last few months while they were on tour. And two of them had seizures in planes. Both planes were landed on an emergency basis so they could get treatment, and they went back up in the air and had another seizure in the plane. And the radiation levels are really high up in the air right now, so people who fly a lot are going to be exposed.
A lot of people don't know this, but right now, as far as death from leukemia, and which has been going on post-Fukushima, a lot of world-class athletes, because they land in our hospital, and the reason is, and it's not a theory. It used to be a theory, but it's not a theory anymore. It's really happening. People who train outdoors in an intense way, triathletes, are, because you're breathing in so deeply, you're outdoors. You know, I mean, our hospital down there is just chock full of them, and we're seeing that, and that's, you know, maybe an angle that I could do some work on, and maybe, you know, try to get a few of these people to come on that, you know, a lot of them have passed away post Fukushima. They got leukemia within the, you know, like when I did. You know, I think about me. I was outdoor. I mean, I'm a hiker. I'm a trainer. You know, I do what I do, and you know, I was out in this thing, and you know, attacked me like a wolf. And I know a lot of people that way, that were, you know, so-called world-class athletes in, you know, the triathlete types. There's been so many of them die. There's been a huge amount of them die post-Fukushima.
we've had a lot. Mike, I just found out about Mike Patterson from the Philadelphia Eagles had a seizure while he was at training camp. And there's a lot of high school football players, cheerleaders, baseball players, and then professional sports that are having heart attacks, some of them as young as 16 years old on the West Coast. And I had a guy that contacted me a couple weeks ago, and he's just a regular guy. Like he works for a computer company, and he said, I live on the West Coast, and I started noticing in the paper all these kids having heart attacks. So I started collecting the stories, and I think I have every single story since Fukushima happened, and I'd like to share my data with you. And can you tell me what I should do with it? And I opened up this email, this PDF, and I almost fell off my chair. He really does have everything, and it started, the first case was a 16-year-old cheerleader in California that had a heart attack on March 18th. And, it's very unusual to see this kind of thing happening in kids this age. And
Season 137, Season 134, Santrum 90. We know exactly what it does. It tricks the heart and goes on. My business partner's little girl, his daughter's 2-year-old, 8 months ago, had a massive heart attack, and, they took her off life support 2 months ago. They used to call it Chernobyl heart. And so that's the one. You're right. We don't talk about the heart attack aspect of this. And it's huge. It's huge. And those people are just dead and gone. Most of them, most people that have a heart attack in this fashion, they don't live through them.
Can you clarify?
This gentleman, he wants the families to know. Like, he's actually thinking about contacting every one of these families, putting together a letter, talking about cesium and asking you, can you fill in any information? Because this is what could have happened, and I just wanted you to be aware in case you don't know.
When you think there was university, you think we got to freelance and do all the work. All of us here, we're all doing all the work. You got these huge medical facilities with billions of dollars in federal funding that should be doing exactly what he's doing, and all these studies, and here we got to freelance to do all these things, and we're spending billions of dollars in taxpayer money funding all these assholes for doing exactly what this guy they all should have, this data should have all been compiled by them and then released to the public. But hell no, we got to do everything. It's so heartbreaking. Like you said, we have to take up nuclear physicists as a hobby. It's unbelievable. You think about it. I knew a lot about nuclear.
Learn how to become a data collector and a statistician and all this. And, I have somebody that's really good at statistics that used to work for the EPA that if I have a question, I go to him. And, I kind of have met all these other people that have special skills or interests, skills that I don't have, but when it's something I need to learn about, that's the person that I go to. And so we've kind of, developed this network of people that we can learn from and share information with, and it's coming together. And
I was a stats professor for 15 years. I taught statistics, and like I said, a guy like that's work is so valuable. If we can get others to gather data, I'll bet you they're out there. Maybe I'll start doing some videos, calling for some of the data. But people need a platform to send it to. I guess you have one. But we need some stat guys to get on our side. I did my interview today. I said, Kevin, why don't you do this? Kevin, why don't you do that? And I'm like, you realize I have leukemia. I broke off my ass. I'm fighting for my life. What more do you want from me? Help the guy out. That's the thing. We need people that are out there. We need people to say, hey, Kevin, I put all this together. I'm a stats professor. I put this platform together. I compiled, I built this program, or I did this. Here, let's start doing this. And, but that's what we're up against. I hate to say it, but people are all talk
Kevin,
anymore.
what have you done for us today?
Yeah. Oh, shit. I did 2 interviews, freaking babysitted my grandson, freaking went for my hike,
Well, I'll tell you what, I think you're number one when it comes to putting the word out.
When I get ticked off, I call Kevin. And I ran.
Yeah. Well, the thing is with me, I've been in this nuclear fight for a long time. Growing up in Utah, the culture that I grew up in as far as the Marine culture, my father, my uncles, the whole thing. And the thing, I watched this nuclear fight, and I watched it fail. And I was heavily involved in it. I watched it, and I changed my tactics. I changed the way I approached this in a very, well thought out way. I taught the communications class for a long time. And I knew the one thing that we haven't done, and I've tried to do this, and by me getting cancer, it's turned it into a compelling story. We have to attack this from a personal level. We have to let people in our lives. We have to let people understand the human aspect of it. It's our only hope. And that's where we've lost it. In the nuclear fight, people become, antiseptic, abstract from it, because they would talk, in front of a camera, like Helen Caldicott's symposium. I mean, it's so dry. There's nothing compelling. There's nothing personal about it. We need to start talking about, hey, my daughter right here, or my friends has got cancer, they're dying. I had the little girl from Chernobyl that was going to do that video with her central line hanging out of her breasts, with me when I did that. I did that video in symphony with Pussy Riot and Femen, and she was going to do it with me. And it would have been dramatic, Here, this little beautiful 24-year-old female naked with that central line hanging out of her, and she was going to do it, but she died right before we did it. But we need, if we can get people that have had death or had, experiences with cancer, whatever, and start talking in a more of a personal way. And that's the only way we can get to people. People are just people are so disconnected. They watch news reports. They listen to radio reports. You know how it is. You really don't know anything about the person. And there's nothing compelling about it. There's nothing personal. And that's what I've tried to do. I've tried to make this intimate. I've tried to make it as personal as I can possibly get, to a flaw. And, that's hard to do. For a person to be able to do what I'm doing, as far as let people into my life the way they're doing. I mean, you can't have children. I mean, my kids are raised. And it's tough, but it's the only hope we have, because the anti-nuclear movement became antiseptic. It really did. It almost became a cliche, people doing drawings of 3 arms hanging out of the side of a person's body. And that's where we lost. That's exactly where we lost the fight. It wasn't personal. It wasn't passionate. We weren't intimate with it as far as people's lives. It was like something it was something you couldn't even wrap your mind around. And that's that's our only hope.
One of the problems, Kevin, I think, is that because higher education became so expensive, we lost the working class, and it was the working class that had more or less a greater handle on this.
It's so true. It's so true.
Yeah.
I talk about it all the time. It's so true. What we did to academia and turned it into this, trust fund baby freaking culture. I mean, we turned it. It's hideous. I mean, I taught it for so long, but I did change,
Kevin.
Yeah.
Okay, can I just step in just a wee minute? Christina needs to get off on another call, don't you, Christina?
Yeah.
She's got another interview to do. So, can you let people know where they can find your website and where you are on Facebook and so on?
Sure. The Facebook page is probably where we have the most interest, and we hit about 500,000 people there a week. It's called Radchick, Radiation, Research, and Mitigation. I have a YouTube channel named Radchick. I have a Twitter. The website is Fukushima Facts, and we're building a new website that'll be interactive where people can upload mutation images of weird things that they find growing around their house or in their garden. So we can put those into a map, and we have over 1,000 images so far that'll go on there too, so we can see how it corresponds to rainfall and make it, a clearer picture for people to understand.
Great. That's fantastic.
Awesome. Christina, it has been our joy to have you, and we're very impressed with you. Thank you very much for your contribution. And you have a Facebook wall?
Yeah, that's the one she just talked about.
All right,
the Facebook page is Radchick Radiation, Research and Mitigation.
All right. Well, I'll join.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Nice to
you're
meet
welcome.
you, Christina.
Thank you.
It's nice to do a show
Thanks,
with you
Christina.
guys.
Yeah.
Take care.
And we'll maybe do another one. Who knows?
Okay.
I would like to.
Keep talking about it. It's great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
will do. Thank you. Good night to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. Where were we?
Well, I really enjoyed having her. She's really up on it.
No, she knows.
Yeah, she's been amazing
Absolutely.
the whole time. You know, you go clear back to the inception of this thing, and I'll never forget it, you know, because, I mean, I had my YouTube gig going along, and then that day it goes out, and this woman came to me, and I didn't know it was a woman. She's like, you know, Kevin, I've been doing videos on Fukushima, you know, shortly thereafter you started doing thing, and I'm like, hey, dude, you know, she was kind of mad at me, you know, and in those days I'd get well over 1,000 emails a day, you know, and I don't even know how I handled it. I still have trouble handling it. And anyway, it was Jan, Miss Milky the Clown, and then I found out about Christina right shortly after. Her and Jules Stan. She lives in upstate New York in Rochester, and they just freelanced and put a little radio show together, those two. And they both got together on social media because they both had kids about the same age, and they're both worried. And so it was kind of just the group of us for a long time. I mean, it was just us telling this story, and, you know, most of the people that were in our sites and, you know, communicating, we didn't really know each other. We've gotten to know each other very well, you know, over this path. But in the early days, you know, we were looked at as completely insane. You know, Jan and Christina, myself and Jules, I mean, people really thought we were freaking completely lunatics.
Yeah.
But
I
amazing.
remember watching you guys, and yeah, it was such a variety of people. Like you with the blue headband, and this woman called Miss Milky the Clown. Who is this woman? Miss Milky the Clown. It was like, and these are the people presenting the truth. You know, it was crazy.
Yeah, you're like, how can you take somebody named Miss Milky the Clown serious?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, we talked about that. I wish you wouldn't have done that, but you know, it is what it is. The same with Christina. I'm like, God, you know, Christina uses her real name at first, but back in those days, it was like, you know, and so I knew that clear back then. I said, no, I'm using my real name, you know, right off the get, because, you know, but you're going, and they're like, how can no mainstream media be reporting this? And you got some guy screaming his head off like some lunatic, the F-bomb every other word, and then some woman named Miss Milky, and that's who we're going to listen to?
Yeah, a motley crew for sure.
Yeah, she told me that she didn't, she never intended to be broadcasting his information, so it was like, it just happened chance that she had that name, so, yeah.
Well, I say it to people all the time, you know, because I would have never picked this path, but, you know, and I told Nuts for Art, which there's another one, Lonnie Clark, who she's great, by the way, and I've known her for a long time. I went up there, her and I did that post-ignorance gig up in Eugene. That interview with Jack Dresser, she's the one that orchestrated that, but I told her, you know, I tell her all the time, I says, activism, we don't pick it, it picks us. You know, and I don't know why it picks us, but when it chooses you, you know, Jack Dresser told her the same thing up there. When you chooses it, good luck turning your back on it. And so it's a heavy burden, but, you know, I think it's so important that we do it. And, you know, I've wanted to quit 1,000 times, but I'm like, we can't quit. If we don't do this, no one's going to.
Nothing more important, Kevin.
That's what I think. You know, nothing else matters. I use the Metallica song all the time. I have hope. I have hope that maybe, you know, but I'm a dreamer, you know, and I believe in the impossible. I have hope that, you know, maybe things can change. And, you know, some people with some souls. I go back to the 1830s, and I go back to Uncle Tom's Cabin. You know, I go back to it. You know, 99% of the populace believed it was Christian to own slaves, and they believed it was the right thing to do. And then she broke ranks, and she wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin. And it was really her. You know, those Gimlet girls that changed the world. It was one person. You know, that story, Abraham Lincoln looks at her and says, so you're the little lady that started the war. It's true. Yeah. You know, so I do believe that individuals can make a difference, a huge difference. I've always believed it. If I didn't believe it, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. And really, what else is there?
It's always individuals that started.
Yeah, it always has been. You know, I I go back, like I said, that's why we went to New York, and I always go back to Hamilton, and that's why, you know, a lot of people don't understand his path. And, you know, we talk about changing the world, an orphan from freaking the Caribbean, you know, with no formal education. And I mean, talk about change the world, one dude. And so, I mean, it can happen. Now, is it too late with Fukushima? I think it is for a lot of people. Yeah. I think it's going to kill a lot of people. Well, I know it is. It already is. You know, people scoff at me when I say it's killing 1,000 people a day. I think if the truth was known, it's killing many more than 1,000 people a day.
Oh, it'll be killing millions.
Yes, no doubt about it. And like I said, what's going on in the ocean itself? Look at all these studies coming out of that ocean, you know. The one with me is the sea lions. No backup studies. I mean, the sea lions are dying, and all the marine biologists all over Southern California, we love the sea lion. Not one of them gives us any, you know, data. We had the Japanese scientists right there under Ness Onofre with his, you know, Geiger counter with those elevated numbers on that dead sea lion right after there. And our sea lion at Hogo Zoo, by the way, died of leukemia this summer. And we know they're marker species, that they get leukemia easy. Yeah. You know, all mammals get leukemia. And, you know, we know that the mammals are getting leukemia. We know it. You know, look at the moose. What's going on with the moose, the starfish, the sardines? None of the sardines come in. My friend that works in the fishery up there, you know, he says they won't even let cameras in there, and the fishes are coming in with the northern cod coming in with red burns all over them. I mean,
if I was going to do an inland study in America, the species that I would focus on, because they're down in the mud, are mussels. Bring those up and examine them, because they are going to show you they are down there where this stuff settles. It comes down in the rain and gets in.
A lot of people don't know this. You know, after Chernobyl, speaking of Scotland, after Chernobyl, it was a couple Scottish scientists who were going out through, you know, those areas, and they were using mushrooms. And they're the ones that came up, and, you know, apparently there's regions in, you know, England, or the UK and Scotland that after Chernobyl, you know, they got rain. And
we got rain solidly afterwards, yeah. I remember it.
And you got huge, they say there's areas there to this day that are, you know, lit up like a Christmas tree. And it was those scientists, and they were using mushrooms on their studies, was their marker they were showing. So, I mean, with social media, there's a lot of people doing a lot of things. You know, I helped organize a lot of the stuff in the early days. That's why I get so much information. A lot of people don't realize that. I'm the only guy really reporting this in detail in the early days. So anybody who's a whistleblower, anybody who had anything, that they didn't have any place else to go, so they were sending them to me. So I'm getting all these emails. I'm like, holy cow, you know, look at this. And so I get a lot of data sent to me. Go ahead.
I'm going to say I'm just going to call for a break in a minute. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah, and I've got to go. So
you've got to go. Do you want to go and finish the call? That's fine.
No, I'll wait till after the break.
Okay.
We can Dave Corso, who runs the network, will let us go over. And if you leave, then maybe Andrew would like to stay a little longer, and we'll talk with him a little more.
Sure, if you want.
You're happy to do that, Andrew?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll be great.
We'll have a quick break.
Man, you know, yeah, and I got to go. And Andrew, I really appreciate your work, and I really do believe that you're on the beach. Those things are powerhouses. They really are. They are really well done, and they were done early. And so, you know, I know if I go back to teaching, if I ever get the green light or anything, you know, I used to make my students watch the Battle of Chernobyl. You know, I have certain different things that I make students watch. Ken Burns' baseball documentary, Battle of Chernobyl, blah, blah, blah. But I'm going to make them watch those series of yours. They're pretty powerful.
I'll be on it.
Kevin, I am serious about going on a camping trip with you in Utah.
Well, we're going to have to do it.
Yeah. Well, let's see what this next year brings, and then I would love to go with you. I'd like to take you to a certain place.
Yeah, I'd love to go. You know, northern Utah
stop by here, I'll be unhappy.
It's still a long ways from Pahrump. Well, you want us to come and get you, huh?
Kevin,
I spend 14 to 17 hours a day right here running Wolf Spirit Radio.
Golly.
I don't have time to go anywhere.
No, I wouldn't think so.
But I wish you'd call for a break because I really got to go wee.
Yeah, me too.
All right.
I want to say goodbye to Kevin if he's going to hang up. So,
yeah, I'm gonna go.
Thank you. Yeah, thank
Kevin,
you so much.
Best of luck, and I hope your health holds up for you. We need you.
Absolutely.
I'll keep fighting.
Thank
you.
Lovely to you, Kevin.
People can find Kevin on Facebook and on YouTube very easily. Yes.
You put them in there. I'll be glad to post them in my chat room.
If you put your links, well, he's on the phone, but
just my name. You just freaking type Kevin Blanch or Post Ignorance, either one. Kevin Blanch or Post Ignorance. I'll glare everywhere. You can't miss me. My blue head man. All right, thanks you guys. I gotta go.
Take care, Kevin.
Okay, Kevin. Thank you so much.
Is it break time now?
Yes, it is break time, Dave.
Well, tell me I can take you to break.
You can take us to break now, Dave.
We'll be back in about 5 minutes, folks. Relax.
Okay.
This is Rebecca Jernigan. You're listening to Wolf Spirit Radio.
Andrew, how did you get started in making those incredible films?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I guess to be honest, I was watching people like Miss Milky the Clown and Kevin, and I was thinking, is this real? Is this what's really happening? And I was cynical enough to know that the media wasn't telling us the truth, and I was making some videos and posting on Facebook, and I got very little response, and I thought. I thought I know the way people think about people like Kevin or Miss Milky. They focus on any idiosyncrasy they see in Kevin or Miss Milky's videos, and they magnify it. So they think that's a reason to not believe them. These people, they're not credible, quote unquote. So I thought, I wanted to make something that was, like what the BBC might make about Fukushima if they were for real. And so something with, narration, and it was reasonably well written and presentable in a way that doesn't allow people to focus on idiosyncratic stuff and just be the pure truth with some, emotionalism and some culture jamming as well, like putting some pictures of Mothra and, so there was a video game footage as well.
Yeah.
So I'm just jamming with people's cultural biases and unwinding them, basically. So that's how I thought. That's why I did it, to sort of overcome that. Cause you see Kevin with his blue headband. He's always wearing it, which is great. It's awesome, and he's effing and ahhing and everything. And
yes.
That kind of elemental anger is great for a lot of people. But I also know, like I sort of grew up, sort of being sort of left wing and not ever a trendy, but I know a lot of trendies would look at that and say, who is this guy wearing a blue headband? I'm not going to believe him. And they won't focus on the information he's imparting. So I guess my gift, what I wanted to give to the movement is a documentary where, it was, BBC style, sort of inoculate them from that cultural bias. So that's why why I made it, basically. Yeah.
I think what you did with that film was brilliant as well, because it was so well scripted, and it is still well scripted, I should say. And
he lets a story tell itself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really effective, because I think a lot of people become overwhelmed very quickly with the subject. Like when I was asking Radchick earlier, I mean, I was convinced that she had, a science degree or something when I came across her.
Amazing,
first of all.
yeah.
So she's really taught herself, and you do have to teach yourself. on this topic, because as you go, you have to kind of get your head around what cesium does, how it responds in the body, and all the various chemicals that they mention. And I think people just get completely overwhelmed with that sort of information.
Well, the worst one, and this is the isotope that causes leukemia, is strontium-90, because it gets into the bones. The body doesn't differentiate between it and calcium, so it takes it into the bones and it just clods out. What it does is it just takes up the space where the marrow would be, and it's the marrow that produces the red blood cells. So that's the cause of strontium-90 is the cause of leukemia. Now, if you can find a way of eliminating the strontium-90, getting it to break down, then you can cure leukemia. Of course, they never have. Their only medical world's only approach to it is to use radiation or whatever, attack the cells and so forth, which is wrong. And eventually, you have to implant marrow from donors, because you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. But of course, I would never say this to Kevin, because Kevin is not where he can take advantage of the sort of thing that I'm talking about. Of course, if you're in the United States, you've never heard of genetic repair.
So,
James.
You want to carry on?
Oh no, I was wondering, James, do you feel that, and Mhairead, of course, do you feel that there are certain cures, remedies that are being hidden, like, from the general public?
When I was going to say this to Kevin, because I have a reason for wanting to take him where I want to go. I took my last wife to this place there in Utah. Because she had cancer, to cure her, and it did.
Wow.
She had Hodgkin's.
Well, we know that there's things out there that they're certainly not going to promote. For example,
you have to understand what cancer is. You have to understand it isn't a disease. It's an immune reaction. Once you understand that, the first thing that you do, there is only one explanation of why cancer cells become proliferate faster than cells can reproduce or can divide. The cancer cell is a normal cell that's converted to anaerobic function because the oxygen in that tissue where the cell has been reduced. So it has to compete with other anaerobic cells or cancer cells that'll utilize oxygen if it's there, but they don't need it. So they have a selective advantage. And eventually, this will induce all the normal cells in that tissue to convert unless there's an infusion of oxygen and you find out what it is that started the process to begin with. In other words, what environmental pollutant started the process to begin with. They know this. They know that back when Krebs, you familiar with the Krebs cycle?
I'm not familiar, no.
The Krebs cycle is a biological cycle that was first discovered by Ernst Krebs, Dr. Ernst Krebs. In the process, he and his son were interested in why the Indians in the Andes did not ever have a type of condition that is related to the lungs, or they didn't have anything like emphysema, they didn't have cancer, they didn't have any of these problems. And what they discovered, the only thing that was any different between them and other mountain people that did have these problems was that when they ate an apricot, they would crack the seed open and eat the inside of the seed too. So they started, and the son discovered what was in the seed was trace cyanide in a compound called pangamate, or pangamate. And he derived pangamic acid, which was a discovery of a new B group factor. And what was interesting about this is that it would infuse oxygen to the tissue 22 times over the normal amount. So eventually the Soviets, who had a lot of cases of gangrene that were caused by frostbite in the tundra and in Siberia, started utilizing it, and they were saving all kinds of people from losing arms and legs due to frostbite because they could regenerate tissue with it. The best case that I ever saw when I was at Michigan State, I watched a 6-hour presentation. This was a documentary film the Chinese had made of a factory worker that had lost his hand in an accident, an industrial accident. Well, it took him 4 or 5 hours for them to get him to the city where he could get surgery, and they had left the hand on the floor of the factory. So they had to go back and get the hand. By that time, it had turned black. Using pangamic acid, they were able to inject into this hand, into this decapitated hand. They were able to revitalize the tissue, replace the hand, and they showed this 6-hour operation using a team of surgeons because it was so comprehensive, it's so intensive that they had to work just steady. You know, one would take over when the other one was exhausted, and they reattached this hand, and the worker acquired 75% usage of that hand that had laid on the factory floor 12 hours before it was recovered and then taken. So for the better part of a day and half of a night, that hand had been revived after laying, you know, it was incredible. And so, but you see, this isn't discussed. It isn't mentioned because it is a cure for cancer. And there was a clinic here in Dallas. It was called the Hoxie Clinic, and they were using a form of this called Laetrile, which was pangamic acid with trace cyanide. And why trace cyanide is important is that the anaerobic cell, a cancerous cell, a cell that has a normal cell that is converted to anaerobic function, has many times more sensitivity to cyanide. So what you're doing is you're reversing the environment to discourage normal cells from converting. Plus, they're getting the oxygen they need, and you reverse the condition. And then for a while, these companies that were making vitamins were making joggers tablets and all kinds of stuff with this pangamic acid. They called it B17, B21, whatever, to try to keep it on the market, because the minute the FDA, of course, found out what it would do, they had to condemn it and outlaw it and so forth. But it was tremendous, and Hoxie had such success. And first of all, Hoxie was only getting the patients that were terminal, that they had given up on. And he was getting in, he was saving these people. He was curing them, sending them home. And he published a book, and I've got one around here somewhere. And this book had hundreds of names and phone numbers of people that you could call and talk to that had relatives or themselves were cured by Hoxie of terminal cancer. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. But there are so many different approaches. With Laetrile, which they use in Mexico to this day, but with Laetrile, what you have to do is you have to tailor it to the particular person. You have to find out how much trace cyanide they can take. Some people can't take much. So you have to build up to, you have to experiment. It's something that you have to tailor for the particular patient, but it'll work. Now,
we know that, I was going to say, we know that they're working so hard now to prevent people from going to alternative treatments and I don't want to hesitate to say cures, but you know what I mean, with Codex I can never pronounce the last part of that, but was that...
Alimentarius.
Alimentarius, thank you.
Yeah. No,
it's Latin.
Yeah, I know it is, but it's
dead for a good reason.
Well, you know, I've lost my train of thought now. Yes, we know that that's being put in place, and it will be effective in not only preventing you from getting your average kind of herbal tincture, but the herbal tincture you would have got at a much cheaper price. You're not going to be able to get that from your herbalist because they're not allowed to make them anymore. And the ones that you will be able to get will be less potent. So
well, I mentioned genetic repair. There. Have you ever heard of genetic repair before?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, you take people that have diabetes, have type 2 diabetes, can be cured in 5 minutes with genetic repair. You know how it's done? It's real simple.
Oh, go ahead.
You take, all you have to do is find a person with the same blood type you have and ask them if they'll donate some of their cells from the Isles of Langerhorn in the pancreas. And they stick a 16-gauge hypodermic needle into their pancreas in the Isles of Langerhorn, and they take a healthy colony of cells, of the insulin-producing cells, because that's where the insulin is produced. And then they inject them into your pancreas, and voila, you're cured. 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
That must be quite a painful injection, though.
No.
I love my brother. He's diabetic. I don't know. I would do that for him, I think.
Does he have type 2 or does he have diabetes mellitus?
I think he has type 2. It was late onset.
Okay, that's type 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there's so many other procedures that I can tell you about that. Do you know that there was a cure for a certain kind of insanity that was discovered back during the Ancien regime in France before the Revolution, but that wasn't admitted into standard medical practice until the 1930s?
Yeah.
And it relates to kidney stones.
Well, a lot of people with kidney infections end up having serious mental health problems, don't they?
Well, there's a certain type. Now, this is, you've heard about, you have a person, a lady, for instance, a mother, who is perfectly normal, has no history of any kind of mental illness or whatever. One day she puts the children in the oven and bakes them. That's kind of insanity I'm talking about. The guy that was in Austin on the tower back in the late 50s, early 60s, shot all those people with a high-powered rifle. He had this particular problem, and they said it was a brain tumor later on, but they just didn't want to go into detail. But he had this particular malady. And when they've never had any kind of mental illness or shown any kind of behavioral problem, and suddenly they go off the binge, generally what it's related to is uremic acid poisoning in the blood, which is can be caused from kidney stones, depending on whether they're blocking the ducts or whatever. And then this uremic acid builds up and is thrown off into the blood and causes this kind of madness. But this was discovered by a French physician back during Louis XVI, the time of Louis, or before Louis XV, I think. And he got, of course, that was one of the protectors of the faith countries, France and Spain both. And, of course, they weren't allowed to do any autopsies or dissections of bodies or anything like that. And he became friends with the executioner family. And so they would turn their cadavers over to him, and he would examine them. And, of course, they were dealing with a lot of murderers, people that had done things like this. And he kept finding these kidney stones in these types of people. And so he decided, that this would be a cure of insanity for this kind of insanity. And sure enough, it was. But, of course, it didn't come about being done or practiced by medicine, although it was noted because he had operated on one of the royal family.
To get back again to Fukushima, just before we sort of wrap things up, I'd like to ask the two of you, do you think that if they were to start evacuating in Japan, that the Chinese would welcome that? They would help out and offer up some of their invisible cities that we hear about that are lying there empty?
I heard some plan. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, because it's getting to that point where I just feel like the crisis is beyond anyone's imaginings at this point in time, for all of us, but particularly for the Japanese people and for these people that have been exposed to as much already, and obviously it's going to get far, far, far worse. Do you think the Chinese would help out?
Yeah, it's a very difficult geopolitical question. But yeah, certainly the Chinese have a lot of spare real estate. I
think the Japanese would be more opposed to that on our end than anyone else, don't you?
Yeah, it's the same. Could they lower them, quote unquote, lower themselves to accept Chinese help? There's a lot of pride on both sides of in both countries. But yeah, I think you can make a case for living in Kyushu and Lower Honshu. I certainly bet the Japanese government's they're burning that radioactive waste in as many prefectures as they can across the country. So they've got to stop doing that. But I don't know when that'll stop. Yeah.
I know that was something we didn't address with Kevin, but I thought we covered some amazing ground because he came on and was just incredible there. But that was something that really shocked me, that they were doing that they were deliberately burning the waste, and not just in one area, in order for everyone in Japan to be subjected to
lower indemnity. Lower indemnity. Yeah. Well, that's one of the people that were writing about this supposed.
Yeah, Chris Busby. Yeah. Chris Busby sort of mentioned it early on, and it was shocking to believe. But it's if the government is TEPCO's the government, what would you do if you were thinking evilly, wanting to do some evil? That's what I would do. If I wanted to lower my
TEPCO is, I go along with Busby when he says that TEPCO is nothing more than operators, that the real engineers are the ones that need to be dealing with the problem. And the problem has been that so far it's just been in the hands of the operators. Now, I don't really buy that, because I don't think for a minute that if Westinghouse or General Electric wanted to step in and take over the problem, that that TEPCO would get in their way doing it. They would love to have a patsy. But, these people running that power station, they had no idea what they were doing. They had they didn't have any contingency plans. First of all, to build a nuclear reactor on the seaside is insanity. And they not only build them on the seaside, they build them at the foot of faults. Like in California, there are 4 that are on fault zones. One of them is right there on the foot of the San Andreas Fault.
Mm.
That's utter insanity.
Yeah. So that question, Go on,
I was just going to say, so the potential for not only Fukushima getting worse, but for another accident happening is very great.
It's inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
It's inevitable. It's going to be harder for them to cover it up now. I'll tell you that, because everyone, whether or not they admit it, they're monitoring left and right. They're monitoring. Most of it's atmospheric, but they're taking soil samples. That's just what a lot of bureaucrats do. Mm-hmm. So they're monitoring, and they're going to know, and everyone would like to shift the blame. Everyone would like to point somewhere else, wouldn't they? So what we're going to have is we're going to have a lot of backstabbing going on. That's one of the things that the New World Order is very good at doing.
May I interject for a moment?
Sure.
Yes,
Every power plant around this world is built on an earthquake fault.
Gosh.
That's by design. And General Electric knew about the problems with their reactors 40 years ago, and they fired the scientists who discovered that as they were starting to build them.
Yeah. Mm. Well, the problem is, and one of the things that you have not heard ever said since Fukushima started, when's the last time you've heard anybody say fast breeder reactor?
Not heard it. I haven't heard it said.
No, you haven't, have you? There are two designs, and the fast breeder is the dangerous one. And they don't want you to know that they all had the opportunity of building safer reactors, and they opted to go with the more dangerous one.
I wonder if the German ones were that, because
they're built by the same people, Mhairead.
Okay. Because Kevin said that they were more.
Yeah, it's just like in Japan. The Japan doesn't have any shipyards, and of course, when the Germans started back into munitions, what's the first thing they did? They started selling Dolphin-designed submarines to Israel. Mm. They're all equipped to launch IRCBMs. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah. I think that
another utter irony, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the huge risk also.
But Israel doesn't have a nuclear program. If you don't believe me, ask them.
Do you know that was what was behind the attack on the USS Liberty, to cover up the fact that they were pirating freighters that were hauling plutonium waste through the Atlantic Trough. And taking it back to Israel, high grading it up into weapons grade so they could build their first atomic bombs.
Yeah, crazy.
Of which they now have over 400 nuclear warheads.
Well, you hear different things. The last time I heard it wasn't that many, but who knows? Who knows what they've got? But there's one thing reassuring about that.
Well, it's so reassuring.
Yeah. I was going to say that I think the big risk also is with the economic collapse that's been delayed, since 2008. We're perhaps looking at perhaps next year. Or it has to happen sometime. And
you're talking about the end of the petrodollar.
Yeah, the derivatives bubble. If the power grid goes down, I think a lot of those nuclear power plants in the United States, their water supplies are a little bit quite tenuous. If the power grid, the water grid goes down, then perhaps you could help me out, James. But But yeah, if there's an infrastructure collapse, then these power plants will find it hard to, to keep their fuel rods cool.
Well, the greatest technological suppression of the age, is one that hasn't been discussed in the media or anywhere else that I'm aware of now for 40 years. 40 years ago, San Diego was projected to be the most populous city in the country within the next 20 years. And the reason that they projected it was the only thing that was holding San Diego back was the fact it had no fresh water. So they devised, there was suddenly a market for building desalination plants, and the technology was perfected. Then suddenly, you didn't hear another word about it. Because even then, 40 years ago, they were looking ahead to taking over water, making water an expensive commodity, like they do diamonds and like they do platinum, by controlling the market. There are two ways to make a commodity expensive. One is to develop it very slowly and to control its distribution and marketing, like De Beers do diamonds, because diamonds are plentiful. And another way is just to lie like they do with platinum. Platinum is much more plentiful than they tell you, but they have ways of protecting their market by limiting the development of it. There are more rich veins of platinum in the United States than there is in Canada. Canada produces platinum, and it's a part of its GNP. But no hard rock mining for platinum is allowed in the United States because it would challenge the market, the control of the market. If the real value of the platinum group metals was understood, then the price would drop overnight. So the Liechtensteins would not make nearly as much money, would they? They have the platinum cartel. It's just like the diamond cartel with the De Beers.
So to get back to Anders' films, did you have any experience with making films before you did the first one on Fukushima?
No, I was just, I just did YouTubes about, I was big into, I sort of woke up about things, in early March 2008. And 2009 I started making, the videos like anyone would make. Like there's the derivatives bubble. They're putting it on stilts, trying to keep the whole financial system, alive. Well, that's sort of 5-minute, 10-minute videos. And when Fukushima happened, I was watching Kevin and Miss Milky and Red Button Studio, Christina, and I was like, I think, Mochizuki Iori, the Fukushima Diary, Japanese gentleman, he said something like, "Oh, why doesn't someone make a documentary about Fukushima? Why hasn't there been one made?" And I by that stage I was already writing it, so I was thinking, don't worry, forget film school. Just something has to be put out there that won't be, subjective either way. It's supposed to be like a objective treatise on the whole thing. Just like, I don't care about, the production quality. I mean, just try to make it as high as you could, but, film school, just throw it out with a bathwater, just, get it made. So, yeah.
You're a natural.
Yeah, it was fun too. Yeah, thank you. But, the story itself, I mean, as James would attest, the Fukushima story, there is just so much to put on film. You could make, hundreds of films about it. There's just so much to cover. And it is really dramatic. It doesn't have to be, it's sensational in itself. But,
everybody else that's making documentaries, none of them have the grace that you have in letting the story tell itself.
Oh,
not a single one of them. Not a single one. I'm surprised that you're not being approached by Hollywood right now. Seriously.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
I'm not.
Well, look at Hollywood. I mean, they're not doing their job they should be doing anyway. But I mean, documentary making is an art form in itself, and I was just so impressed by all of them. And I've been showing them to people. I post them obviously on Facebook a lot, but when my brother was visiting, he was really impressed. So they are having an impact, and I know it's, there are days like, you must have days like Kevin as well, where there's just this frustration of people not talking enough about it, and you've been there, you lived in Japan, you've got connections there, so.
Yeah, it's really strange, because like, I have all these Japanese friends, but I didn't really get any response from, the posts I've made. I saw this is my documentary, and it's sort of been this mystified silence. So I'm sort of seen as a renegade by my friends. Like, I don't have a lot of friends with the same rapport as I had before, because we're the crazy people. Friendship's supposed to be forever, unconditional, but it's not the case, because when you're out of the group, especially in Japan, then you're sort of ostracized.
So when you made
it's frustrating that way. Yeah, sorry.
I was going to say, when you made the third film, you were in Japan and you had your Geiger counter with you. Was that an uncommon sight to see somebody with their Geiger counter, or do you see?
I think it's. I didn't see anyone else with a Geiger counter, but I do know that some mothers, quite a few mothers take them. But I would just put it down, just put it next to my foot so no one could really see what it was. I was a bit wary of it looking suspicious, but in the US, the police are just out of control. What stories I've heard, but yeah, it's not an uncommon sight. But yeah, it's just sort of like it's like a unspoken word. Are you familiar with Harry Potter? They don't say they don't say Voldemort. It's a taboo word. They don't want to say the word radiation. It's like everyone gets a little kind of have a macabre look on their face, and he's talking about radiation again. That kind of feeling. So it's frustrating that way. I can't imagine what Kevin goes through, but
Kevin is undeterred.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I'll tell you, I have, every time that I watch his videos, and I watch all of them that I come across, I've probably watched 25. And I'm just getting started, of course. But every time I watch you, I just chuckle and chuckle and chuckle. And I keep thinking, when I was in school, they called me militant.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a tour de force. He's like, he's a living, breathing testament to the whole story. I mean, for me, I'm a Johnny come lately. I mean goodness, and all the documentaries, they're made from him, Christina's, and Miss Mookie the Clown's, their output. That's the way I learn. Like I was learning right here with James and yourself and Kevin. I'm sort of taking it in. And that'll sort of manifest in probably the next documentary as well. So, yeah. So it's been a privilege.
I'll tell you, it's been our privilege to have you on the show. We want you back, and maybe we'll have Mhairead and Crystal both on the next time. And between them, we men won't stand a chance. but I mean, it'll be something, because both of them have very strong minds, very capable and very agile. And, that's saying a lot.
Yeah, no, I was really happy when, Christine was coming on board. I was saying the gender balance is, it's more of a balance there, so it's good,
She reminds me of Crystal. The way she comes in there. We did a show here a couple of weeks ago on social engineering, and she had researched it brilliantly, and all I have to do is sit back. I'm the pretty face, you know.
That's right. No, she's really on the money. Like, just she knows so much, and she's learned in such a short time. It's phenomenal. Yeah.
It's important. When something's important to you, you're not going to let any grass grow under your feet. You're the same way. I mean, look how fast you mastered making documentaries, and you are a master at it. I mean, I am not trying to win points with you or anything. I'm speaking sincerely. Your documentaries are exceptional. They're the best, and I hope you keep making them.
Yeah, no, I will. There's so many stories to tell, and like when I get an idea, it's like, and the time from making the idea to writing and producing to publishing it, it's like agony, because like you want it out there, and like you're not there yet, and it's just boiling inside you. And but yeah, thank you very much. That's really.
You remind me of Dostoevsky. That's in his Notes from the Underground. His only autobiographical sketches on him. He talks about feeling the same way.
Yeah,
and he lived in absolute poverty.
Wow. Yeah, it's only years after they get recognized. Yeah. Sorry, Mhairead?
I was just going to say, it's that whole creative output side of this that's so interesting, because Kevin's an artist as well. And I don't know, I just noticed how that innovation has to come into it to get people's attention. We've got to get people's attention. It's absolutely essential. Pressure from the outside, hopefully, as Kevin was pointing out about the marine biologists, I find that pretty shocking. And these stories about the deep sea fish that are showing up, and the scientist sort of, the clip that I saw, he was gleeful about it, like this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I'm thinking, hello?
Yeah.
You're gloating about this. This is a bad sign.
This is the thing that's wrong with academia. They're so unimaginative that if they discover something that they can do a research paper on, that they just go gaga over it, and it could be anything from starfish melting off the west coast and all, anything, and they jump around, like, well, this will get me tenure, this publish or perish crap. So suddenly they lose the perspective of reality, and this is what you have. When they call it the ivory tower, this is what they're talking about.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I can't, with anthropogenic global warming, there's a whole industry wrapped up in that whole. I can't speak for everyone, but for me, it's like, it's just like I have friends who say, "Oh, global warming's it's more bigger than Fukushima because the UN just said so." It's like, oh my gosh, it's just unbelievable.
Well, if it's their agenda, the thing is that unless they can make money with it, then they'll totally ignore it, and they'll jump on something that they can work into some kind of industry or to make money with. Global warming is, look what they're doing with global warming. It's enhancing the takeover of all small business. It's enhancing the takeover of people's lives and enforcing regulations for the industry. And this industry is so big, of course, it's an extension of industries that are already there and established at the multi-billion-dollar range. So, they don't have competition.
Yeah.
And it ties in with the activism around geoengineering as well, which I tried to bring in a wee bit, but this is such a big topic that if we can get maybe the same people together or some other researchers to raise awareness amongst the groups who are also fighting the chemtrail geoengineering issue, that this is part of that, you know, the radiation side of it is part of that as well. You know, it's big. Because I've noticed that a lot of the crowd that I know on Facebook who are very aware of what's happening with the weather and with chemtrailing and everything, which is great. They're looking at the skies and they're photographing it and they're reporting it on the ground, which is wonderful. But the Fukushima issue has kind of passed them by, and I can say that because it passed me by. You know, I knew about it, but I had to go back to it to really get in deeply again, and that's when I found your films, Andrew. I found Kevin, and I showed the material to James, because I thought this little niche, this group, relatively small group of people, are really incredible as a community, and getting information out there that nobody seems to be looking at.
First of all, you're not cottage industry. You're not confined. Mm-hmm. You have no agenda. You are dealing with the truth. You're dealing with the reality. Mm. And unless you're uncompromising, you would never be able to cover the whole vista of what this represents. And we're talking about the death of an ocean. We're talking about something that's going to continue. It's going to last for thousands of years. The effects of this are going to exist for thousands of years. And, you know, in the meantime, there are people that depend upon this ocean for their sustenance. Mm. Do you think they're going to give up their sustenance? No, they are going to die. They're going to die. If you eat sushi out of the Pacific Ocean in the near future, you're going to die. Mm. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. It was heartbreaking going to Tokyo and to Japan, not knowing I couldn't go to any of those sushi restaurants, you know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. Like, I remember after the earthquake, after the disaster hit, one of my friends, he said to me on Facebook, he said, I've done lots of research. The fallout will never reach the United States. In capital letters, not going to happen. You know? And I was like, oh my gosh. And, 2 years later, lo and behold, 400 tons into the Pacific Ocean daily. He's still not really acknowledging, the gravity of it.
Well, you have people, you have to understand, you have people who are objective thinkers and people that are subjective thinkers. Mm. Subjective thinkers are people that, when they were growing up and they badmouthed their mommies and daddies and they had their way, they connived this, they connived that, they became, in a way, a self-serial killer of themselves and of a reality that they could have possessed. And over being self-indulged, they became subjective thinkers, and they taught themselves how to believe only what was aggrandizing to them. And you see them around. I was married to 3 of them. Yeah.
Wow.
I was married to 3 of them, and that's exactly. If I had tried to discuss what we're talking about today, if say one of them was around and I was trying to discuss, the nose would go up and they'd leave the room. And the next time they come back, you're not going to talk about Fukushima again, are you?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Even though you have evidence,
doesn't make any difference. That even makes it worse. That makes it worse. Mm. That makes it worse. Then you get called paranoid, or you get called this or that, whatever, anything to shut you up and keep you from ruining their lunch or their whatever. You're just trying to depress me. How many times did I hear that?
Yeah.
So how long do you think you'd be happy around one of those, Andrew?
Oh, not so long. It was hard. It was hard getting my wife on board, but she's sort of cottoned on to the whole thing. She's approached it from sort of a consciousness, a stream of consciousness kind of perspective inside. But yeah, it's good having your partner on board for sure. Mm. Yeah.
It makes a difference
so you've
just
read
having...
James Joyce, have you?
Maybe I just stumbled upon the same thing. I'm not familiar with James Joyce, but I'll have to
Stream
look
of
that up tonight.
Consciousness.
Yeah.
Virginia Woolf had been working on that, and he comes along, and his first book, his first novel, he masters it, and some people have said she committed suicide because he beat her to the punch. So women can have egos too, Mhairead.
Oh yeah.
Oh, can they? I didn't know that.
Well, I liked it.
Sorry, Mhairead, go on.
There's another question came into my mind and it's gone again. Oh, the jet stream.
Yep.
With the fallout. Let's talk about the jet stream, because I didn't realise that until relatively recently when James told me how fast that travels.
Oh yeah.
Kevin mentioned it earlier on about the philosopher that to do with the bombs. I've forgotten what the bombs are called, but that's coming to hit people.
If that plane went up into the stratosphere, or not even quite into the stratosphere, but the upper atmosphere, and the jet stream caught it, it could have brought it to the California coast within 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's conceivable that if it was blowing directly east at, say, 600 miles an hour, it could get there in 1 day. Nobody really knows. Nobody really knows. These jet pilots talk about, we're going along and suddenly we're not making any headway.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So where does that start, that actual jet stream, geographically? I'm trying to picture it in my mind.
They have general patterns, but specifically they're no two are exact. But the jet streams will follow a pattern. And when St. Helena's blew here in the south, where I live, in the Midwest, southern Midwest, we lost our jet stream. So we had the hottest, driest summer we had ever had on record. Sure. This was back in 1979. The winter of 79-80, was the worst winter we had ever had on record. Here in Texas, the ground stayed frozen for 40 days. We had water mains bursting all over the place whenever it thawed out.
Wow. Yeah. I never even thought about that, how that affects the weather or the climate. I just knew it was a big volcanic explosion, But, amazing.
Well, and then following that, there was an accident. There was a worker that dropped one of these huge wrenches down an ICBM silo and hit the warhead. Mm-hmm. Didn't hear about that. Yeah. But we were just beginning to get rid of those really incredible sunsets, and then all of a sudden it became bizarre again. I can remember that.
Okay, well, I'm aware that Dave has let us go over time a wee bit, which is really, really kind of him, but I'm starting to flag here. So...
Oh, poor Mhairead.
This is, the sun's starting to come up for her.
Yeah,
She's got to retire. She's a little Dracula lady.
I know, I was thinking I was making a cup of coffee for myself at 2:30, 2:45 in the morning. I thought, when was the last time I ever did this? I was thinking it was back in my partying days a long time ago.
We're a bad influence on you.
I feel so bad. It's like 3 in the afternoon here, 4 in the afternoon. So it's so leisurely.
Oh no, that's good. I'm really, really pleased you could make it. Absolutely.
We
and Kevin
have
phoning
enjoyed
in
it tremendously. It has
Christina.
been a privilege.
Oh, it's been great. Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah. So I'm
sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was going to say I have to apologise to the listeners for being a bit of an amateur, but I think it's gone okay.
It has been great. Yeah. Well, I will say good night, and would you stay in touch with us, Andrew?
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, I thought I wasn't sure you'd come to. No, absolutely.
I will look for you on Facebook, and I will submit a request, a friend's request.
Yeah. I think I'm one of my Facebook. I'm friends with you there. But yeah, I'll look forward to it. Absolutely.
Great.
Yeah.
We want to do this again, don't we?
No, it's
all right.
Well, I would like to. Yes, I'm not sure how have a different angle or whatever. I don't know. I'm just definitely
you got
like
2
to do
weeks
more.
to make up your mind.
Okay. Maybe
not next. Maybe not next show, but in the near future, because I have a feeling that within a month or two, there's going to be some new developments.
Oh yeah, probably.
Oh, you have no idea.
Well, thank you again, Dave. It's been absolutely brilliant, and I really, really appreciate you letting me stand in for Crystal and for giving us this space, this time on the air. It's been fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I asked my creator mother and father years ago, what are you giving me a radio station for? They said, we'll help you as you need it.
I love how your voice just comes in.
Station. You don't have very many people here. I said, I don't care. I said, the people that need to hear it and want to hear it are here. Well, that's right. You can't chat about anything in my chat room. You got to stay along the lines of the host and the guest. And if you don't like it, leave.
Yeah, it's been great. Dave, I really appreciate it too. And Mhairead, you have been an excellent hostess.
Thank you.
Excellent,
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dave and James. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, Andrew. My pleasure.
We'll speak again soon.
Okay.
Take care, everybody. Take care.
You all have my Skype now, so don't hesitate if you need something.
Sure thing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good night, everybody, or good morning.
Bye-bye. It's this unknown thing. Like there's so much attention to finding the cure to cancer, but we know what it is, but people.
Well, my doctors asked me yesterday. They're like, I'm in probably the number one leukemia unit in the world by default. Fimbo Peterson at the top of LDS Bone Marrow Transplant Center. By the way, I'm the very first guy in the United States, only the second one, to have OS de novo AML, which always gets diagnosed, leukemia-conforming tumors. I diagnosed myself, but to do this without a bone marrow transplant. They always automatically bone marrow transplant. And we decided, so I'm walking along, but yesterday they're like, Kevin, what is it you're going to do with your life if we can, if we turn you loose to go to work? Because I haven't been released to go to work. And they're like, I says, I'm going to take on freaking fighting the people that gave me cancer. I says, we want to treat the byproduct. I mean, he says, that's all we want to treat here. We want to treat, the Huntsman Center's right here, Huntsman Chemical, 385 plants making benzene all over the world, but yet they're the biggest, cancer hospital one of them in the country here. So all we want to do is talk about trying to cure cancer, I mean, it's such a gigantic thesis here and all over the country, but no one dares even mention the root cause of cancer. It's a taboo subject here. It's outrageous that nobody will talk about. Leukemia, all cancers are correlated with nuclear fallout. Now, yeah, sure, cancer was around, but the studies all exist. Cancer, in a dramatic way, is absolutely 100% mirrors with nuclear. You can take a chart and lay it over the top of the rate of cancer in this country and where the nuclear fallout is, and they are 100% directly correlated. So is multiple sclerosis, so is autism, so is a whole range of diseases. And nobody will even talk about it. It's like taboo.
You might find a cure if you talk about it.
Yeah. Well, they have done a lot of cure. I mean, the type I have, if it was even 5 years ago, I'd have been dead. I mean, they do miracles in that hospital, and it's a brutal. That's what I think a lot of people don't realize about the treatment of AML, which nuclear fallout, thyroid cancer. Yeah, what do? They cut your thyroid out. We call it Utah smiley face here. It's everywhere, but AML, even if you do survive, I'm here to tell you that treatment is so incredibly brutal. I mean, it is brutal. They quarantine you in there. They put a stent in your spine. They put one in your jugular vein, one in your brainstem, and you're quarantined in there in an ICU unit from hell. And they basically kill every cell in your body over and over and over. And then, you know, they plug you in. You got that central line hanging out of your jugular. It's called the Hickman line. And they spin your blood. They have tubes in the rooms that go down to the pharmacist, and they take your blood every morning at 3 a.m. and they come in there and they just plug you in. You're like a machine in there. You're plugged in with, you name it. I had 22 things hanging on my tree at one time, and they do it over and over and over. You know, it's a radical treatment, but people think that they confuse chronic leukemia with acute leukemia. Now, chronic leukemia is nuclear fallout too, but most people that get acute leukemia, by the time they realize what they've got, they're dead. I mean, I got sick. I was perfectly healthy. I went from 170 pounds to 130 pounds in less than 3 weeks. I mean, it mows you down so fast. So people think, they confuse it with chronic leukemia or, you know, different kinds of cancers. They don't realize that for the most part, nuclear fallout cancers is a death sentence. Mm-hmm. I mean, and to think that they could ever even come up with a cure, because you think about it, leukemia, AML is blood cancer, and those cells go rogue, and your entire body has cancer in it, every cell of your body. And so think about trying to cure somebody, trying to save somebody like that, when your entire body is cancer from head to toe. And, you know, and that's what they do. So, and it's not a pleasant death either, and it's not I mean, people think, because most people die. I've sat with so many of them in there. I'm head of our support group, and so many of my friends have passed. And you don't just lay down and die. You know, it's an ugly, horrible death, and it attacks a lot of very healthy people. By the way, a lot of people in that hospital from Moab in central Utah, because the guy who won the Ironman a few years ago died in there. The number one triathlete in the world, female, is in there right now. A lot of them end up in Moab training. And like I said, all the uranium tailings are down there.
Yeah.
All the nuclear fallout. And they're in there training hard, and they're breathing it deep. And if people knew the truth about that area down there, no one would visit there. No one would ever go. And it's one of those spectacular, beautiful places on the face of the earth. Mm. You know, so people go down and they ride their bikes and they train, and, you know, and they breathe in those uranium tailings and the 300 open air test of plutonium.
Yeah. You know, there in Grand Junction on the tailings pile, I would spend a lot of time in Grand Junction. On the uranium tailings pile, there was a Manor bakery that had been built. In the intakes for the ovens, they had convection ovens, was right over the hottest part of those tailings. We took a dosimeter down there and measured it.
Wow.
So, you know, you were getting a little surprise in your loaf of bread, weren't you?
Oh, boy. I mean, the whole uranium thesis, that this crazy idealism that somehow nuclear is the clean replacement to coal, just say it didn't even have an accident. No Fukushima, no Chernobyl, none of this. Just think about the footprint. I mean, the mining of those uraniums, I mean, they're hideous. I mean, you go to Calgary, you go to southern Utah, you know, the moxing of the fuel, the carbon footprint alone is much worse than coal ever dreamed of being.
Yeah.
You know, people say, oh, God, coal's killed more people than freaking nuclear. I'm like, are you kidding me? No, nuclear's killed hundreds of thousands of times more than coal has ever killed. You know, like I said, you've been down there. You know what those uranium mines are. They're hideous.
Oh, yeah. Well, I knew a number of uranium miners, and all of them, whenever they'd find a deposit, it'd usually be dirt, and they would have to tunnel back into it and crawl in there on their hands and knees to make sure the continuity was consistent throughout, when then they'd turn around and sell it to the government. And they would crawl on their arms, in their stomach, they had tumors the size of grapefruits up under their arms and along their waist. And you'd say, well, aren't you concerned about that? Oh, no, I've learned how to live with it.
Yeah, they all died young. None of those guys ever. I mean, they all died. I know tons of them. You know, like I said, that uranium mining in Utah was a gigantic gig in the 60s and 70s and, you know, or excuse me, in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. All over, not just in southern Utah, even up this way too. You know, and like I said, when I grew up as a boy here, it was the number, I mean, our governor when I was young in 1981, Scott Matheson, died of exactly what I have at 54 years old. You know, and he was very beloved. But by the way, he was a progressive, believe it or not, here in Utah. People think Utah, this radical freaking neocon nutcase state, you know, Mike Lee specials, but it wasn't always that way. And they were very environmentalist. The Mormons here were very, very environmentally conscious. So much more. Well, the campus I'm standing on right now where I do all my work, you know, I knew Edward Abbey personally. I knew Fawn McKay Brody personally. I knew a lot of these great, you know, environmentalists, Carol Gallagher, who I still know very well. They all came to Utah for a very good reason. I mean, we were, you know, even that asshole Redford, they landed here because we were, you know, this state really was ground zero for environmentalists. The Mormons cared about the environment. They don't anymore. We're the filthy, dirtiest place there ever is. This whole mindset that shifted all over the world, you know, as far as rape the earth for any profit, you know, supposedly jobs, which is so untrue. And people don't even think of the byproduct or the consequences of any actions anymore. They're like, it's all about right now, a little bit of money right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's incredible that they're proposing that new nuclear power plant in Britain. You know, it's just craziness. Like, we've only had a triple meltdown like a year or so ago, and they're proposing that. Yeah.
How is that possible? The mindset. I mean, you know, I'll tell you the one thing that has disillusioned me the most of my activism on this, the one thing that I am blown away the most, and I knew what this machine was going to be right at the gig, because I knew they were going to go right out of the Chernobyl playbook, and I knew they were going to play right out. And that was before I knew it was a triple meltdown. I thought it was a single meltdown the first day, at least one. I reported as one that first day. I went crazy.
Well,
I knew
that's
that.
What they said it was.
Well, they didn't even say that.
Yeah.
They didn't say single. They didn't say a single melt. You know how long it took them? Do you know how long it took anybody besides myself to report that this was a full core meltdown? 6 months.
6 months.
6 months for even one. You know, they denied it the whole time. I was the only one calling it a full core meltdown for a long time, and then some of us other vloggers out there, that's YouTubers, you know, we did all the heavy lifting. We did all the work on this. This has been reported in incredible, accurate, and detail by a small handful group. Andrew, myself, you know, and so the story's out there.
Christina?
Christina's here.
Hi, guys.
Miss Consolo, how are you?
Christina's here.
Oh, it's been an intense day.
Notice her also known as Radchick. That's very good.
Yeah. That's Radchick from Facebook, particularly. That's where I found her initially. And just to sort of cover what Kevin was saying about just a few group of people. I mean, coming from my perspective, when I really wanted to get into looking into Fukushima and get the sort of the deeper story, I mean, that's where I went to, was YouTube. And I found Miss Milky, the clown, and then I found Kevin. I found you, Kevin, quite early on in the piece. And I think it was the one that you were repeating again and saying, you know, look what I was saying way back then, and nobody was listening. I think that was one of the ones I found. And to be honest, I knew you were telling the truth, and it really overwhelmed me. I kind of walked away from it, because at the time I had so much going on. But I remembered you, because I remembered the way you were, and I thought, that guy knows what he's talking about. That's the truth. So coming back to that, coming back to you and Miss Milky,
that's
and then finding,
when it got told in a radical way in the early days by me and by other people pulled back. And then when it started to dribble and drab and this, you know, boiled frog into the so-called alternative media, then people are like, whoa, this thing is real, you know. The world populace is so ignorant to this day that they're still waiting for confirmation from the big mainstream media. To this day, they're waiting for it. And the one thing that has disillusioned me more than anything on this whole fight that I'm blown off, I would never believe that I thought for sure after day 100, day 200, day 300, day 500, somebody would break ranks at Berkeley or Stanford or Oregon State or Washington. We'd get a study come out of the Pacific Ocean showing plutonium in the plankton, and the whole world would go in crazy, and that would be the end of nuclear. I really thought that's how it was going to play out. And here we are, 956 days, 957 days later? Not one single study freaking out of any of these 300 marine biologists, parachutes, not one saying yay or nay. Now, who would ever believe that is possible? But so here we go. We have to just use pure logic. And how can anyone believe that this thing isn't the greatest ecological disaster in the history of humanity that has even half a brain cell? Yet people are still waiting for confirmation from BBC, Reuters, CNN, they're still waiting. And, they can wait right to I equate it to the arguments we're having in 1915, 1916, 1917 about germs. And people are the same thing. Exact same thing. They said, these germs don't kill people. You're crazy. You're all crazy. The science world covered it up. They covered it up for 5 years. And then we had the influential plague of 1918. And
there were medical doctors at that time that didn't even believe in germ theory.
No, most of them didn't.
Yep.
Until the influential plague of 1918, which ravished this country. It killed some. I used to make my students walk through our cemetery. I said, walk through the cemetery, and I want you to record every single person, whole families, 1918. And after that, and by the way, the media who covered that up, and the science world that covered up, the intellectual mobs turned on those people. Do you know what? I mean, that's the part of the story that people don't know about that. That after that did happen, and so many of our people, the people that pulled the Sanjay Gupta Dog and Pony Show was going on and everything, what they did to those people, I won't even want to talk about it. But, it was pretty, the mobs turned on them, and they were real mobs that really went into the streets, and, they did what they did. So, it's happened before.
We don't seem to learn from it, do we?
No.
So Christina, what's the latest about the earthquake there? Have you got any news at all that you can give us?
Well, I've had the live seismic server going pretty much all afternoon. There's been a lot of aftershocks that aren't really being reported, probably because they're under 5s. But it's pretty active still right now. And I guess people who felt the quake said that it was of a very long duration. The shaking went on for about a minute. And I saw a video that was posted just from north of Tokyo. It was just a guy on the street, and people were, crouched down on the ground because they couldn't even stand up. It was shaking so bad. And you see all the cars and the vans that are parked shaking back and forth, and all I could think of was that spent fuel pool, being sloshed around, and it's already, there's so much damage.
Did it prove out as a 7.1?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was Australia's earthquake notification center still has it at like a 7.6. So, I mean, it was sizable, that's for sure. It gave them a really big shake. And, right away, within like 20 minutes, TEPCO comes out and says there's no damage. Now, this is the middle of the night over there. Everything's dark and it's raining. And they're already coming out and just saying, why not say that?
Boom, when I got the worst kind you can get. Just like a freight train hit me. So the timing of this has been, it's unbelievable, really. But YouTube has changed the world as far as activism, as far as knowledge, the information age, and a lot of people, you and I have taken advantage of it. People have taken advantage, but it's really still underutilized so dramatically. It's a powerhouse genre as far as knowledge goes, and this word is spreading. It is getting out. If we'd had YouTube when Chernobyl happened, the whole nuclear monsters, they'd have been done a long time ago. And I know everybody gets frustrated, and this is a catastrophe, but, it is working. I just came from the Imagine Dragon concert. I was just over there. I protested over there, and those kids are going to drop a banner supposedly down in there today. You know, I just left. You know, say Fukushima when they play radio with them. They're Utah kids. They're here right here at the campus. I'm right on the campus right now. I protested over there all afternoon. But people here are oblivious to, I mean, they're so oblivious to the fact that we're the cancer capital of the world. When I grew up here in Utah, we were the downwind. I mean, this was the number one story in Utah when I grew up. The 300 open air tests in Nevada and everybody dying in Utah. I mean, that's all anybody ever talked about. And it was very real, people dying, and it's like now everybody's just so, you know, it's like they just accept cancer here. Cancer's just, in Utah, is just, everybody has horrific death stories of cancer, and they just accept them. It's just, I don't know. I don't even know the word to use for it. You know, we're the cancer capital of the world. You know, Chernobyl may be higher than us now, but not far. We're the autism capital of the world. And that was, a lot of my PhD was working on proving that nuclear fallout is autism. You know, before.
I remember when I was prospecting in Utah, I spent a lot of time in Grand Junction, and they had a uranium mill there, which you're probably aware of.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, one of the things that was interesting is when they would mill the ore and concentrate it, they would put it in a cake and lay it out in the sun, and the workers would go out to turn it. And they would absolutely lose track of time because of the radon gas. And that's when they started experimenting with how to create lost time.
Yeah. I mean, all of these experimentation came out of Utah and the Southern Utah thesis. The whole cabal of nuclear nightmare just grew, and they tried. You know, my dad was an atomic veteran. You know, grew up here, was a drafted Marine. By the way, my uncle raised me. The special, or the D-Day Omaha Beach vet passed away yesterday. But anyway, my dad, you know, when I was a kid, he got out of the Marines. He was in the Marines for a long time. He was human guinea pig in the test site, and he was an incredible specimen of a man. And he'd have these incredible seizures when I was a kid, and I didn't even know what this was. And he'd go into this amnesia, and he was in the vet's hospital, and they're always experimenting on him back and forth from San Diego to here. We lived here, but, you know, he had ties to the Pendleton. So was stationed at, my uncle was the second shirt at Colorado Springs in the Air Force. His 1 year younger brother, and he was stationed at the Pentagon. My dad was so Semper Fi, he wouldn't talk about it. But when I was a little boy, I mean, I would spend my time when I wanted to see him. I'd have to go to the vet, so I'd be in there for months at a time with these incredible lapses of memory. And there were all kinds of people in that hospital there, from the uranium experiments, all the experimentation that was going on all over southern Utah. By the way, my dad and those guys, now that I found out, you know, after he passed away, after they human guinea pigged those 40,000, they fed them LSD. You know, and they used every kind of experiment you could ever believe on those guys. And then they just erased them from humanity. Says, oh, they didn't exist. You know, their records all burned in the fire. But the uranium thesis here was gigantic, you know, all over southern Utah, the experimentation that was going on down there. You know, still is. There's a fire burning in the one you speak of that's been burning for 70 years now, and it's still burning. But people here don't even talk about it anymore. They're just like, it's just like a subject they don't even, when I was a boy, it was all anybody talked about. It's just a dummied down society that I think people have, deep down inside, I think people have given up. You know, they know, and they just, I don't know what it is with them. You know, I term it ignorance, which I know it is ignorance, but I don't know that they don't care. I just think they feel like, what can I do? You know, nothing, so they don't even think about it.
No.
You know, except death.
Yeah, I think it's got a lot to do with, like, perception management, like managing people's, you know, perceiving of things like, why do people get cancer?
You're listening to Wolf Spirit Radio.
Welcome, my brothers and sisters, to Race with Time. We're having a little bit of a Skype problem trying to get all of our contacts in here, but I'm going to turn you over to James C. Horak.
Hello, this is James Horak, and I have the illustrious pleasure and privilege to introduce some of the leading voices in the anti-nuke movement. You'll recognize them once that we have them all assembled. They have things of import to say. We do not have Crystal Clark with us tonight, our esteemed colleague Crystal Clark. She is attending to some important matters. Instead, in her place, we have Mhairead McDonald from Scotland, and Mhairead has single-handedly brought to us some of the leading voices in this movement. Whenever I first discussed her coming on the show and being a co-host with me, I had no idea she would succeed so well. But I will step aside and yield the floor to her, and she can introduce our guest tonight.
Thank you, James, and thank you so much to Dave of WolfSpiritRadio for allowing me to step in as well and not be Crystal for the night. I'm not sure if we have everyone. I know we have Andrew, Ebisu. I'm not sure about Christina yet. Is she there? Have we added Christina? I know she was having trouble, and I was hoping also to have Kevin Blanch calling in.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
You there?
Yeah,
hello,
I'm here.
Mr. Blanch. How are you this evening?
Hi. Great.
This is fantastic.
Live and kicking.
So we don't have Christina yet, so maybe she'll figure out how to get in there. But okay, so to get started, I just want to make sure that Kevin's doing all right, because I know he was having tests done. So how are you feeling?
Well, I'm tired and I'm burned out, but I feel pretty good. I told my doctors yesterday I really feel probably the best I felt in 20 years, which is kind of scary. But I got good results yesterday. My big bone marrow biopsy 2-year test was yesterday, and you know that was a big deal. It was a big deal in there, and
Wonderful.
They came out, strong. So, I've still got a ways to go, but I've defied this type of disease that I have is almost 100% killer, and I'm walking this walk in an experimental way for the last 2 years. It's been a beast, but so it's good news. I feel really great, to be honest with you. I feel really good physically.
That's fantastic news.
Wonderful, wonderful news.
Yeah.
So,
what a freaking battle.
And you haven't actually spoken to Andrew, have you? You know about Andrew and his films.
I know Andrew, via YouTube and back and forth, but I've never personally spoke to him ever.
Yeah, hello Kevin, how are you?
Great. How are you doing? So nice to talk to you. So nice to meet you.
Yes.
I love your work. Your work's been so powerful. When I first saw your very first video when you did Fukushima on the beach, I was like, wow. I was so turned on that day by that.
Yeah.
I still think of all the stuff that's been done out there in Fukushima, I still believe that Fukushima Beach one, that should be in theaters everywhere.
Yeah, thanks
powerful
so much.
Piece. Powerful piece.
Yeah,
Hollywood quality, too.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. Well, there's some production, obviously some production errors, but I'm really happy it moved people such as yourself, because I was, pretty much channeling all that you and Miss Milky the Clown have been teaching me. That's the product of what I'd been listening and watching. So, it was a great great conduit for all the information you've been giving. So that's where it comes from, really. So, it's great.
Yeah, what timing this all happened. I was going along with this whole YouTube gig, experimenting with it, on my PhD, and then boom, I'm an anti-nuclear, have been my whole life, and Fukushima happened, changed my world, and so I was there right there, and for me to rant and rave and carry on, I've really, really tried to take a different angle on the nuclear fight. I've been involved in the anti-nuclear movement my whole life, and I've really tried to take a different angle to try to put some strength into this, to contemporize it, because it's just been a disaster since 1982. And so, and then for me to get to rant and rave and carry on about leukemia, and then to me get leukemia, 7 months later, I mean, it's so staggering to even think about this whole journey. I would have never believed that I would ever get it. Even, I rant and rave and carry on, you're going to get leukemia, I live here, I know the whole thesis. I would have never, ever believed that I would ever get it in my entire life. And